Welcome, guys. We sorry for the delay, but we are back with a brand new episode of the Shonen Ronin, episode 38. We're gonna be here talking about Black Clover 329, My Hero 350, Undead Unluck 106, One Piece 1046, as well as Ayashimon, a new series that we're gonna bring up to talk about real quick. Uh, One of our series that we've all been reading, and we actually kind of like it. We actually are interested of where it's going to proceed going on. So let's see our faces. How's it going, guys? Welcome back. We have our boy Aniki Smash back into the show. We have our boy Kendall X Anime into our show. Yep, we are back. We are here. New chapters, new out. Some mixed feelings. There's a great My Hero chapter out that came out today and is now taking another week. Next week, taking a break.
Yeah, break weeks
Break.
are pain weeks, but it's worth it. As far as a big believer in making sure the manga could get their rest. So
Agreed.
I'd much rather them get to finish the story at a pace that is healthy and we get finished pages and stuff like that for the week to week experience. The volumes they'll have the time for, but I want them to actually get to put out the week to week thing that they can be happy with too. You know what I mean?
No, I definitely understand because being a mangaka is very hard work. It's very stressful. A lot of high crunch time, and like more often than not, we see them getting sick really easily, and just we God forbid anything like the worst possible case situation come for them, and we don't have an ending to our story. But yeah, I'm glad that My Hero's gonna take its break. Technically, Gege has taken his break for this week as well for chapter 181 for Jujutsu Kaisen. Fujimoto had brought out its another one shot of its 200 pages, but I have not read that yet. Maybe down the line later.
Yeah, I'll get around to that one. I didn't even like you said 200 pages, and I was like, oh, so I got to make sure I actually have time when I read that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm about to say I got too much. I got too much in the queue for that. So that's a
And
whole other series I could be caught up on.
I mean, like everybody's already kind of waiting for a while for Chainsaw Man Part Two, the school arc and
Mhm.
something like that, and then the anime we still have no announced date technically. All we know is just fall. So, but I mean, I gotta respect Fujimoto taking its break, and then he still have time to write one shots for the Shonen Jump series. I'm fine, perfectly fine with it. But yeah, anyway, guys, like we said in the intro before, we're gonna talk about Ayashimon first. So,
Summoning the audience from Discord.
Yes. Also trying to do the same.
but yeah, Ayashimon only has like less than 20 chapters so far. I like the concept. It's been very cool with the whole yakuza, the whole gangs, everybody's yokai gangs technically. Although we're not unfamiliar about yokais and gangsters and mobs and just fighting each other. This has a new, different concept of it. It's more mob based. It's more different clans in a sort of
It,
way.
it's a yokai yakuza manga, so if you will, it is a yokaiza,
Yokais.
like or yokuza, like however you can go yokuza, however you want to do it. It's a yokai yakuza manga, heavily inspired by the currently fading out trend of the yakuza, which is why they're being paired together. The yakuza losing a lot of its power in the past 2 years, tying in so culturally relevant timepiece. So I kind of like that. Yuji Kaku is actually a mangaka I really enjoy. I don't know if you can see it, but I do have Hell's Paradise back here, which is the previous series that Yuji Kaku did for Jump Plus. So
And I hear good things about Hell's Paradise, actually. Like, very good things. It's having its own anime adaptation now, too.
the anime adaptation is a case of lukewarm feelings about that adaptation, primarily because there's speculation we're getting 127 chapters condensed into 24 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So that could really mess with the story, but I'm hoping that we still get a good adaptation. I think that it was a story that had a lot of potential to really be enjoyed and has a lot of what people like in the beginning. But I will say that it's a story that sticks to its themes, and sometimes that can get messy for people.
Okay, I could see where it could go. I mean, especially with Jump Plus series, where it's more seinen, I could say, where it's gonna be more mature and stuff like that. But to fit over 100 chapters onto 24 episodes, that's a hard challenge without cut and pasting a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'm wondering why we're still trying to force this much content into these short number of episodes, but I mean, it works for some. It doesn't work as much for others. So I think that it'll work out. As far as Ayashimon is concerned, as far as my thoughts on it, yes, the Yokaiza or the Yakuza, however we wanna style them, it's a pretty good series. A couple refreshing takes on tropes, but also some very familiar tropes still present. But you kind of have this this main character who you love watching a series that doesn't take itself too seriously. So we're introduced to this character, and the character is like, man, you know what I always wanted to be? The protagonist of a manga story. And it's just like,
Yep.
Yeah, I bet you did always want to be this. And you kind of you meet this person, and they have they seem somewhat exceptional for some reason or another that you don't know. And then you find out that, oh, it's not just humans in the world. There's these human presenting yokai or demons, and they're the ones that run the underworld and the black market and the Yakuza. And it's a unique take on some things while also being very traditional in the mindset of what a shonen series that you would kind of expect to see from Shonen Jump and Viz. So like it's definitely like a refreshing take. It's just like I said, not to get too deep into it. I definitely want you guys to go check it out. We'll definitely talk about like the most recent chapter. But again, this human, super strong guy, for whatever reasons, you read it, I'm not gonna tell you. He has some past, and he builds up this strength as a young man, and he's not able to find a normal job, and he's kind of moping around, and he bumps into some yokai, yokozu, whatever we want to call it. Demon, yakuza, whatever. Yokaizu, we're gonna go with that for now. Yokaizu, and ends up saving this one promising potential new basically underworld boss as she's trying to start her campaign to be one of the top dogs. And then you kind of get into more about their backstory and their premise and why they're doing this journey. And you get to the point where we are in the current chapter where you've been introduced to the big bad. The big bad has smacked our happy protagonist duo.
We got that villain encounter already.
Yeah, we got a nice introduction to the villain. And it's honestly it's good. I like that we're getting these kind of like up-tempoed intro stories instead of these drawn out first arcs. So it feels like this arc won't take long to resolve itself, but you know that it's not the beginning or the end of what is this actual world. And they've done a good job of laying out the foundation. And even in this most recent chapter, giving us more context on like how humans play into the dynamic of this, demon ran underworld, as well as, what type of powers and how these powers present themselves in the different bodies and entities.
And I wanted to talk about that because this is one of the things that I'm kind of excited for, because during Hell's Paradise, their previous work, the power system was simple enough that it didn't need to be explained in a bunch of complicated ways, and yet it still had range and some depth to it. And we're seeing one similar art style to that with the way that the chakra system is drawn, which lets me know they're going to probably be leaning into a more Tao spiritual based power system again, which I'm fine with because that'll be about chakra natures and all kinds of stuff like that. But one of the things that I liked about this chapter too is that this series is all about like referencing other series in a lot of ways, as well as being its own thing. and its setup reminded me a lot of. I don't know if anybody here has read Tenjo Tenge or watched it.
That's
But
one of my favorite mangas, bro. No
you
cap.
remember the training with the Far Fist where the goal was to punch the one skillet and then have the force transfer. Right. And so that's what I was thinking of when he's doing the fire punch training, where he's like supposed to hit the right thing and like actually get in tune with the mysticism aspects of the series more so that he can actually, you know, fight in this verse. And of course, then having him figure this out, not in a sense of completing the challenge for himself, but to save somebody, kind of reminded me of the Yu Yu Hakusho with the spirit beast in the beginning when Yusuke has to throw the egg in the fire.
Yes, there's a lot of these new series, no cap. A lot of these new series are taking a lot of structure from Yu Yu Hakusho. I'm noticing it in the mangas and animes and what's popular. There's a lot of formats that are being inspired very heavily from Yu Yu Hakusho, and I'm definitely here for it.
I'm also glad that Ayashimon has survived the past 20 chapter of getting axed mark. I know usually like if you already have a previous manga that's really popular and has well established, you have a good foundation, you have a good base, and you have a good amount of trust where Shueisha will give you the chance to keep going for a good amount of time, and it's actually pretty popular enough in Japan enough so that it gets people's interest. It's pretty well ranked in its chapters, and it looks like it's survived past its 20 chapter mark from many of other mangas that didn't pass 20 chapters, unfortunately.
And that's a testament to Shonen Jump too. They're doing a better job of understanding what series work.
I'm worried that, like, on one hand, I'm worried that we're not out the woods yet because, you know, like Phantom Seer got up to like 30 chapters. But of course, we also understand that part of the issue with Phantom Seer is that while audiences were somewhat happy with it, when you had multiple Exorcist series within the past 5 years, those two Exorcist series being K and Y and JJK pop off the way they did. Phantom Seer was almost like, well, you're pulling current Black Clover kind of numbers or something like that. Not good enough. Because you're in an Exorcist genre, and it's like, well, we can get a different Exorcist series. Because if you think about it, there's currently 3 Exorcist series on Jump with or at least 2 right now. Sorry, K and Y is relevant because it keeps getting anime episodes, but with even Ayakashi Triangle being an ecchi Exorcist series, and then you still have JJK. You say who?
Yeah, like Ayashi Triangle is very yokai based, but like JJK is more curse spirits. Basically monsters.
Yeah, and like if you think about it, even Chainsaw Man was technically another Exorcist series because they were supposed to be going around to kill demons and stuff. So, and
we're not counting the popular monthly series with like Twin Star Exorcist and like Blue Exorcist.
That you can even tie in Undead Unluck to an extent in being in that same type of premise right now, where it's like you're trying to purge the world of these entities and these powers and abilities. So it's kind of, there's a lot of bleed over to some extent between these series.
So it's like Phantom Seer, for what it was, like for the realm it was in, it wasn't successful enough. So, but it could have had, you know, like K and Y did, that slow start that built up into something else. So they probably should have given it a bit more chance.
But at least I feel like it's more kid friendly when it comes to Ayashimon. Like it is not like something where it's gonna be like ecchi like Ayashi Triangle. It's not as like deep, brutally bloody. Like
it's so. My thing about that is that this has been a lot more tame than the first 20 chapters of Jigo Karaku as far as violence goes. But because it's Yuji Kaku, because Yuji Kaku worked with Fujimoto. And specifically, Yuji Kaku was an assistant for Fujimoto on Fire Punch.
I remember that too.
And I don't know how much you remember about Fire Punch.
It get really gruesome. It get really
So
messed up. But didn't that come out for like Jump Plus too, or like Manga Plus?
uh I don't know I can't remember what that came out on. I know you can read it on Viz now.
Oh,
Uh
interesting.
yes, but it's website only. So you have to be
Okay.
at the desktop or pull up a browser on your phone. You can't do it through the app.
Interesting. But yeah, it is very, very mature. It's not something you can easily read on your phone apps, but you know, if it's something that you are able to read the phone apps, they allow it for it's for everybody. But still, like it's not like we're gonna have to see kids gonna be reading like they might read Hell's Paradise because they've heard of it and they've like it's really well established, but I think they'll read
Hell's Paradise is also desktop only.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Very,
Uh,
very
Okay.
interesting.
I'm gonna be very honest with you that part of the Tau power system involves snoo snoo. Like that's an actual part of the power system and about balancing of energies between like yin and yang and stuff like that. So that's part of why I'm kind of expecting the like as we deal with like this current setup and where the story seems to be going with Maruo, learning about how to harness energy, seeing more how that's incorporated into different aspects of life, because it's obviously not just going to be a one-to-one like enhancement type power,
Mm-hmm.
especially if what we saw from Tao was anything to have a hint at, because we saw people end up using that to cast illusions and stuff like that.
Did the other previous series always establish where the yokais gets their longevity, their life through the donation and the scares and that sort of stuff?
So in the previous years, they didn't do yokai. They had basically aberrations that were experiments.
Mm.
That were, so it's like you had the spiritual nature was within the power system, but then there was a bit of science and spirituality because the person was trying to form an elixir of immortality, so that a lot of the monsters that you saw were basically humans who had been experimented on and like merged with plants and stuff like that and manipulated, or like insect people and stuff like that. So
That's gonna sound creepy.
oh yeah, it's very, very like unsettling. It's one of the reasons why I'm worried about the speed at which the stuff is adapted, because like when you started off, it's very much like a horror manga.
Mm-hmm.
So this one's a lot lighter and like more fun than Jigoku Raku opens with, because Jigoku Raku is like basically the whole journey is trying not to get executed. And I mean that from like chapter one, it's like, all right, I'm here to execute you. And if you don't want to get executed, here's a goal. So you don't have to worry about that. But you'll probably die trying to achieve that goal.
Man, that sounds a lot like JJK episode 1.
So,
But yeah, I do like the Ayashimon's like concept where like they have to fear humans in order for them to keep living because that's their life, and it's about money and donations for them, which makes sense. And you learn about the story about the grandfather, who was the boss of the entire thing of all yakuza's, which who you always tend to see when there's a yakuza story. There's always a head leader,
the Oyabun.
and like
There's always the good one that died.
He
unbalances the world.
Who always knew like, oh yeah, my time is about to come. I need to pick a successor. I can't bring my daughter into this kind of situation, or I can't bring my kids unless it's a son to inherit the stuff. And then some shady dude is always just steals the inheritance and just takes over everything.
Yeah, like I said, there's some very familiar tropes here. Like even your oblivious, disconnected protagonist who is very unfamiliar with the ways of the world, kind of thing. You know, stumbling into power and into situations, and not necessarily having a super moral standing, but they're the good guy kind of thing. Like there's a very hard trope at play here, but still a very the setup is very unique.
I would also say Yuji Kaku also follow a little bit of Chainsaw Man's Denji's backstory, a little abusive
Hmm.
childhood. The only thing that he found his own like safety and salvation is through Shonen Jump manga, it's like the magazine and tropes. But he always like he's a poor family. He doesn't really get the latest stuff. He always just
Yeah, he's just got a
rereads
backlog
everything.
of.
And like you throughout this entire chapter, you see like whenever he's frustrated, he buries himself in like manga to escape, and like that hasn't. It just becomes a habit for him where like he feels defeated, he feels frustrated, anything like that. He always turns to like what he comes his comfort zone, and that's how he gets stronger from it. According to the old man, it's like he's touching his suksma Sahara.
Yeah.
It heals
Yeah,
him,
so
but
he's basically going into a state of, if you watch other different martial arts series, it's that inner well, and he's healing his inner well by taking the time to meditate and visualize in the form of reading these mangas. And it's cool because I think I mentioned this before, but like a lot of these series are doing a better job of incorporating the importance of like mental health. And this is another one of those, like, your power in healing comes from your mental wellness of, doing this and that. So I think that's really important. I think that's like to me, that's kind of what I gathered from like the whole manga healing, like again, healing that inner well inside of you. um and then the whole thing is that there's so much power with these yokai, but they're just concepts. Their physical form is just concepts. And this chapter kind of really re-emphasized that point and put like another layer of like, the physical body is this, but you can't touch them because they are this. So they're doing a really good job of distincting, or not distincting, sorry, that's where am I going with my words? I just fused two words together.
no, I mean I get it.
Distinguishing what they want to be represented for this series. I'm just like I said, I'm very curious. I think at this point I've read so much manga series that like I see something, I see the end goal already, and I'm like, okay, how are you gonna diverge away after this? Because you're kind of speeding to a point very quickly. So how does your world maintain relevant? How does your story keep its importance and its like hype once you get to this point? Because again, it's like you've already set up everything. He already knows how to punch through things. He's got the
Right.
he got the
He's
Luffy.
buff.
He got the Luffy training.
Yes.
He can hit Kaido now. So it's like, what does that ultimately end up meaning for your series when you get, again, you think about, you get to this point so quickly. It's like, he's already busted. You just told him how to punch through, spirit forms. What else could there possibly be is the question, and
So-
how they answer that question is going to be what keeps the series alive.
And what we have the door open, like the doors we already have, like, gotten a little sneak peek into, even if the chain's still in the lock. When we had those people kind of walk through walls and then just kind of show up, and they were like the agents or something like that, where however, like the yokai conflict is likely not going to be the end game or final conflict of this series. We have what's effectively like this, what will seem to be to me like the first yokai saga, right? Where this saga is going to be centered on getting other rival gangs under their control, getting that stuff established, and then coming to a head and coming into conflict with the authority figures, the good guys, so to speak, the light, and basically having humans become the opponents later on. And what the yokai all have their own utilizations of this spirit energy through their abilities, of course. And so seeing how other humans have tapped into that power throughout history, especially since there's going to be we've met some half yokais now just in this chapter alone, which means we also now have the potential for half yokai people just out there running their own thing, running organizations, or being involved in things that are tied to government, stuff like that. So we have a lot of space for this to go from like a Yakuza manga to a Yakuza plus some other stuff type series. and still maintain that like this is still ultimately a game, but this is how they ended up here,
Yeah.
and it'll all make sense.
And so there's always that again, I'll use another One Piece reference. The Marines are supposed to be the good guys of the series, but we know
Yep.
there's some level of corruption there.
Mm-hmm.
Another series of reference, just thinking about, like you said, kind of like how we normally see stuff. Eventually we're gonna probably get to some point where some human has realized and they're manipulating other humans to create these abbreviant or these other adjacent type forms, or mass producing. So someone wants to create some type of thing by controlling some one party, and it like you're gonna get to that point. But again, the question is, how does this story play itself out? How does it separate itself from every other series that's already currently doing exactly what they're doing? And kind of extrapolate itself from there, right? Like how does it like build itself out from not being stereotypical? Because that's like the challenge when you talk about like even the current anime being such a very isekai heavy. Like
Oh
there's a
man.
lot of stuff in this season isekai wise, and I'm like, that's a slightly different take than I've been expecting. Oh, that's a little slightly different take. So you're seeing how these animation studios and companies are like, because they have to review this stuff too, right? They have to
Mm-hmm.
pitch the content for it to get animated and still sell, bite, and produce. And they're still writing these series and mangas as well. So it's interesting. Like I said, it's gonna be interesting to see what direction Ayashimon goes in. But I feel much like Kaiju number 8. I think there's a lot of potential here. I wouldn't say I feel as strongly as I did when I started reading Kaiju number 8, but a very similar inclination of like, oh, this could be really, really good.
I agree, because like there's a lot of text when it comes to Ayashima. Like there's a lot within the to read of the story, uh, but it does have its potential. I'm hoping people don't get too bored and reading too much into a lot of the all the readings and stuff like that to get fully understanding about the world within uh, Yuji Kaku's new Ayashimon story. But it's still following its tropes, which is fine. Nothing really wrong with it. It's just the backbone of almost everything that you kind of need to establish. Like for instance, Elves just says the security bureaucrats has done surprisingly little since from the start. From all I've known from like Yakuza's kind of story, like they're usually morally corrupt, bribed, or they don't want to be involved with like turf wars and that sort of stuff. And that's usually the trope, Yakuza story kind of trope kind of thing.
Yeah, like and the thing is that for me it kind of feels like, and Alves mentioned this in the chat too, that um if they take down this dude, then the bureau will probably become more relevant. Kind of like how, just using that One Piece example again, they knew that Big Mom was going to go to Wano because she was chasing Luffy. And, Sakazuki might have been like, nah, Kizaru, don't go in there. But sure enough, we got those world government ships on their way to Wano, hoping to annex it if Big Mom and Kaido both lost. And this kind of feels like what will end up happening here with this story is that, let's say he only gets to write another 10, 20 chapters for this series and then it gets axed. You can still do a conflict with Doppio and getting control of the Endless Syndicate that is fulfilling through a 1v1 duel, and just have that be the thing, and then still round up your story, and you might not get to sell everything you wanted to, but we'll still be able to go, all right, well, cool, that's the ending. I accept that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't get that axe and you are given that room to keep going, you can expand upon the Supernatural Bureau, bring back other members, other yokai, potentially have it be where some yokai have found a way to have bonus like investments, kind of like how we have that part of the Genesis thing in JJK, where maybe they have like some kind of death fund or something like that, where that yokai is specifically donated money or something like that posthumously, and that leads to somebody being able to accelerate their return from the fizzle dimension or whatever you want to call it. We have potential that we can go with the story, but it's also making it a point to keep a lot of its plot right now very contained so that it doesn't finish off in that really unfulfilling space of I introduced all these cool concepts but never got to flesh out any of them, which kind of is what happened to a certain degree with like Red Hood and
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's what happened to Hellward and Higuma, because I really liked that series that got introduced. Phantom Seer, I think, kind of got a good mix of both, like establishing a decent plot like through that juncture and setting some stuff up. But
yeah, I mean, we talked about even like the whole Samurai 8 situation. They got a little bit more breadth, but still that kind of forced conclusion right when you finally started to expand the world. So I think I assume it's a lot of pressure for these mangakas as well, because I'm sure some of these mangakas, even when their stories don't get picked up initially, continue writing stories and stuff. So it's like you don't want to be too disingenuous to the story that you want to write. But if you do get picked up for Jump, you're trying to stay relevant for as long as you possibly can. And then also respect the fans and be like, all right, well, I got to this point. Here's an ending. Because again, you never know. There's been instances where other studios have picked back up manga series because they felt like it was worth picking back up, where they pick it up for animation, and then the anime does a little 12 episodes and it does really well, which then fuels the manga getting reproduced again. So there's a lot of different things that can happen. A lot of those things that I just said are not atypical in any kind of way, but there are things that can happen sometimes when a series is good. But Shonen Jump has a very strict system to them about the way they go about things. While seniority is like super important, they still very much so honor sales and the fans.
Yes.
So if it's not popular enough, it doesn't matter how much seniority you have as a mangaka, you're still at risk. Like I said, I'll always use Samurai 8 as an example because Samurai 8 survived longer than it should have, as far as I'm concerned.
It got like an extra 20 chapters it probably shouldn't have gotten when you compare it to a lot of the newer series that ran alongside in the past couple of years. Like, for me, Zipman was more interesting than most of Samurai 8. So I would have liked to have seen more of that. And I think that's also where I think a lot of us fall, where some people sometimes they honor that veteran pen, and it's like, maybe you shouldn't have.
I mean, at least like they don't go into like their students' other work and becomes the main director of their.
Man, what series are you possibly talking about, Sam?
Oh, you talking about? Oh, I was talking about Samurai's mangaka going into the son of his other manga.
Oh man, I couldn't imagine what series you could possibly be talking about, Sam.
I wouldn't either.
No idea.
But I think if we're good with the Ayashimon talk, we go straight into Undead Unluck.
Yeah, we can go on the Undead Unluck. I think we covered. Well, are we doing Black Clover or
no? Kenny?
I'd like to touch, Black Clover. I'd like to touch on it real quick, not Boruto's dad's son.
Boruto's dad's son.
Oh man. I'd like to touch Black Clover real quick because it's not gonna be long. I'm frustrated because I'm seeing signs of exactly what I was concerned about, of them not know. I feel like we're teetering on that. I don't know where to end my series line. And I'm really hoping that we just end the series here. Give me, like I said last week, give us an OVA, give us a spin-off, do whatever you need to do. But I think this story and what Black Clover currently is needs to be paused. We go into this chapter. I'm pretty certain, based off of the fact that the other demon present is like, oh, you've won, essentially. But there's a whole other demon present. You know what I mean? I'm just like, what is that? What are you alluding to? And he's been sitting in the back, kind of like watching this fight the entire time. He's been watching all the fights this entire time.
And he's clapping and doesn't seem to be like, oh, a partial manifestation. And I actually tweeted about this, and I was like, I feel like Adremalek is stepping up to be like the continuation of this story, and is more or less going to be the main villain.
I don't like that. And here's my thing. Again, If that's the case, let this be the end of Black Clover and give me, I hate to use this, but we'll use the typical thing. Give me a Black Clover for instance. Give me whatever continuation as a separate entity to this series. End the volume here, end the series here. And then if there really is something else to pitch to us, I think it needs to be repitched. But I think drawing out the series just because you have the fandom in a certain point, I feel like it's so rude, man.
Look, my thing is that I'm like, what can a drummer like bring to the table that we couldn't have got with Lucifero? And to a certain degree, it's, you know, Lucifero's comeuppance, his arrogance, and like I don't. So here's the thing: Magne versus Dante was cool, but not because of anything involving Dante.
Nope, not in the slightest.
It was finding out Zora got to teach Magne how to fight a different way. It was seeing them actually, because it is rare in Black Clover where we actually get to see people's new spells unlocked be the byproduct of them training a lot. A lot of times it's they trained and then this spell unlocked because they were in a crisis and it applied some of the principles of their training to it, like with Noelle's dress forms.
Right.
And so for me, it was just cool seeing Magne and like seeing Magne fight a top tier villain and win.
Yeah, especially because they intentionally outcasted him from everybody else who got the special privilege of training. You know what I mean? And then he came back and he beat one of the 3 big bads of the final arc, basically on his own. And when I say on his own, obviously there's setup and whatever. But he 1v1s one of the big bads, one of the big the sub bosses essentially, and he takes them out on his own right, on his own terms.
And my thing is that Beelzebub and Xenon versus Yuno, Langris, and Finral was far superior to anything like as far as like character-wise what Xenon and Dante were doing was just way different. And it kind of feels like we should have seen Lucifero getting upstaged by Dremelette coming. Just because of that, like if Dante was a disappointment and Beelzebub and Xenon was the hype, it didn't make sense for Adremelech to be the real big deal. And we saw, like Lucifero was stated, I'm not at full power, so we can't have a villain who wasn't at peak strength be the final fight of the series. Like you can do that, but it's not an ending that most people would be satisfied with.
It's giving Digimon.
Like
it's giving old school Digimon, like the first like couple of seasons where it's like you beat Devimon, but this was not Devimon's final form, and then you beat this other form. And it's like ha ha ha, but you stopped him from reaching his ultimate form. So now you gotta wait for him to reach his ultimate mega final form. To that, it's very much so giving that. Same thing, like I said, for those first, like I said, if you guys are familiar with that Digimon, it's definitely giving those sentiments of what are we really building into, what are we building up to kind of thing. So it'll definitely be, it's gonna be very interesting to kind of see how we staple back into those things. That's interesting.
Would it ever come to a point where it would have Black Clover re or +2 or
that? And that's what I was kind of saying myself.
Basta?
No, it'd be Yusta, right?
Are we going the son route or are we going the daughter route this time?
Yeah. Give us a daughter.
But I think it's journey. Like Black Clover's has over 329 chapters, almost as much as My Hero already. I don't think it needs to overstay its welcome and just have over 800 chapters like Naruto did, Bleach did, One Piece did, back in the day with the senior seniority of the mangakas and that sort of stuff. Like, if um, if it really is going to the route of end, and I think you guys said this last week, it could end within like 10 more chapters at least or something like that. And
Yeah, and it wouldn't be a surprise or a
Yeah,
harm to the series.
it would. I think it would be accepted, very very much so accepted, if over the course of the next 7 to 10 chapters, the series is wrapped up. And
Just
I think you could even. I think that's like I said. I think maybe some type of like I don't know if this fight is fully resolved, but maybe just a few more chapters of something. But really, it should just be like, hey, this is where the series is going. You
this,
set up the new world. You set up the thing. You know, some acknowledgement. They got to go back and get the acknowledgement. It's got to go back to his kingdom. That doesn't have to be a whole like set of chapters. But there's a couple of things that you can tie the loose end on, and then again come back. Like I said, give me a new set of captains. Give me a new set of teams of people. Make the big bad still based off, because it'll be based off of the premise of everything that's been set up now. But we know that it took some time for even Lucifero to get back to this point with his plan. So it would make sense if a generation or even 2 generations, maybe it's Asta's grandkid. You know what I mean? Whatever the case may be. But like I said, I feel like we could get away with again a Black Clover or something to that extent. Please don't make it Black Clover but
all right,
something of that nature.
All right, we'll name it Basta. Or
Oh no,
Basta's.
that's too close. That's too close to Bastard and Basura.
I mean, Bastard was a good series actually.
Bastard
it was a good series.
But yeah, I don't got anything else for Black Clover. Like I said, I just wanted to kind of
Everybody
touch back to that
so
point
like
of, like,
so we're all
wrapping it
ready
up.
for everybody to have their own epic log kind of situation. Like someone's gonna be king.
That's the chapters. Go ahead and you can resolve who Asta actually romantically ends up with. You can resolve the other. Each of the 3 kingdoms has some type of resolvement that needs to happen. That can be a couple of chapters. Resolving dynamics. Is Yami actually gonna live through this? Is he gonna, go ahead and give us those little touchy. This is where you give us the little romantic pair ups. Does Yami finally acknowledge oh Lord, what's her name? What's her name as a romantic interest? Because
I mean,
we know that Yami's aware. Like he's not like super oblivious to like the situation. Like they kind of already hinted to that before. Yuno's gonna go back to his kingdom. Is he gonna want to stay with his kingdom? Is he still wants to be rivals? But also maybe he wants to prove his rivalry and how he can run one kingdom. I think Aniki kind of pointed to that as a point before. So it's time to just send the story in its final stages, and then like I said, come back. You could come back immediately. Even yes, Charlotte. I don't know why I couldn't remember their name just now, but
it sounds like Yami is gonna end up like Guy Sensei in Naruto.
I just I just want to see. Just go ahead and give. If you're gonna move to a year, so that we building process of like the different nations and stuff. Maybe an alliances form. What does that look like? It's just I think you like I said, I just think you stop it. I don't know what else to say with that.
Okay. We're all good from here. That's our quick talk of Black Clover. We could go straight into Undead Luck.
Yep, like what Kendall said is true. Like we kind of just wrap this up. We didn't need to do the Adremalek thing, and
Undead Luck, yes, going in. Soul Ghost physical non-physical form being out in release of Seal, and it seems like Unruin just knew this would happen. But he just knows like every Negators has like their own rebellion against the rules, and he knows like nothing can ever keep Andy down for any reason at all. And we kind of know like we kind of learned that Unruin has no attachment to the world in general.
Mm-hmm.
And his whole monologue speech towards the girl was like, life was always been unfair. It's unequal. It's unintelligible. It's unsettling. It's unclear. like nothing should be an attachment. He never identifies himself as like a human with or negator with the other people and stuff like that. He just established like, yo, God created me and I'm just doing whatever I want with God's work kind of thing in this most twisted way.
Yeah, like Ruin is basically setting out to do whatever and be like the worst parts about humanity, because it's almost like instead of unruin, he's unhuman. Like he's trying to be as like the worst. Like when people think of something as humane, they usually think of it as a good thing, and it kind of feels like he's trying to embody like the worst aspects of it.
It makes sense because it's like almost portrayed as a monster, like with vampires and Dracula and stuff like that, with its teeth and can't be exposed to sunlight and that sort of stuff. Like he really is like the embodiment opposite of what humanity is, and he would not hesitate on anything when it comes to killing, torture, anything way that can like really tick you off. He will just straight up do it. And to know that there really is no motivation. There is a motivation for him, but it's more like everything is like free form and justify ends means kind of weird character in a sort of way. He also has, so it's interesting where the monsters that came to capture the people is from his suit, his armor called Blood, the Uma Blood.
Which that in of itself, it on one hand it's a little weird, but on the other hand, if you think about it, like one, it reminds me of we brought the Get Backers the other day, but Dr. Jackal was somebody who had blood manipulation powers, and so the idea that he would have Uma Blood and use that for his aesthetic matches with the whole vampire theme, but then also it being utilized for like weapons, clothing, etc. Because then it also functions as armor basically too. So
yeah, again, this is like this sentiment of like him being a souped up version of Andy. So like, you know, you had like the whole uniform Uma before, and just like, oh well, you got blood, and blood has this high functioning version of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, instead of him just having clothing.
Right. You know, Clothy isn't good enough. Or shout out to Towley from
South Park.
Park.
It's also interesting where like you learn more about the soul and intake, and Seal was able to like learn enough where you have to believe there's a soul or an attachment in order for you to physically touch it.
Yeah.
How Unruined says like highly intelligent realists usually struggle to accept the existence of soul, and there's a perfect example of that. And I honestly thought that you had a problem too with it, and it is interesting. There's a real difference between the Umas and the Negators, and it's really interesting all in general within this world.
I think part of it is that the Umas are a more flexible entity by the sheer nature of their existence.
Right. I think he points to that this chapter too, where he was like, again, talking right at the beginning, was like, you're basically saying like you're not the oppressed like half of this. And I think when we talked about it maybe a week or two ago, I think you and I was talking about that same point of like the different dynamics of, you know, where everyone is. And I think even last week we was talking about like the Umas kind of realizing that they're kind of starting to fall into that same premise, and that's why you gather together, and the whole thing with like, you know, you're weak, so you have to join forces to be strong, etc., etc., etc.
I mean, even the way that Ruin or Seal talks to Unruin in this chapter plays into that too, because he goes enough prattle, or she goes enough prattle vessel.
Yeah, and that every time there's a point to like Unsealed being checked, like that word vessel is always thrown back in. Like every single time, it's just like, oh, blah, you don't realize the ignorance of your ways, and that's why you're gonna fail. And he's like, shut up, like every time it's like, shut up, vessel.
Yeah, and like the Umas call them that a lot, like to demean them, because they are like the rules themselves. and negators are just vessels for a rejection of a rule.
Yeah. But I think man, that dialogue, you know, the unequal, unintelligible, like, is unclear. And I think again it's this manifestation, right, of like all of what is terrible about being a human. Because I even like I read it and I was like, I ain't gonna hold you. I was like, this man is spitting.
There's only one
Yeah,
of any given person.
Yeah, I was like, he was saying stuff, and I was like, we do as humans kind of create these rules that we create ourselves, and we project them onto the way that the world should live, and then we project that onto how everybody else should perceive the world, and that's a lot of our conflict in the world. You know, we make things unclear, we make things, you know, unequal, you know, taking some of those words, like I said, some of those things that kind of stood out when he said it, and I was like, I ain't saying you right, fam, but I hear where you coming from.
What I'll say is that as a person in the US who does my own taxes, they could also just not make me have to either do my own taxes or pay somebody to do them, because there are other countries that do taxes and they just send you a bill or send you a refund check that following year, like, all right, cool, this is what we kept track of it. This is what he means when he says we purposely just make stuff like a bigger deal and harder than it has to be, just to be unfair. Because like the whole point of that is to make it so that like
every system is in place to keep track of all of our all of our taxes, but we still have to worry about it. Like, I'm sorry, you want to beat me up every paycheck by taking a chunk of my paycheck, and then I have to worry about dealing with that again at some point later on? Like, why don't you just, like, if you're already dipping into this and managing it, why do I then need to be part of that process? It, you know,
higher chances so they can audit you.
I mean, they should already be auditing. They got a whole they got a whole entity system business around it. Why we should be auditing every month? You should, I gotta pay taxes every paycheck. You should have this being checked every month. Y'all, this is a big company. This is, like, as far as I'm concerned, this is a bunch of jobs. Why aren't you auditing every month to just keep track?
Yeah,
but
we can't just
go.
But we can't just not do that. And it's like, you can't do this to me. I was birthed by God.
Yeah, so that's like a other like dynamic, a little semblance of religion, even or even cult, actually, where it's like, no, it doesn't matter that I was born in this human flesh. I was chosen by God. I was the whatever of God. I was, you know, this thing, and it's like
the Messiah concept.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. A big Messiah complex, to the point where even Unruined is looking down. You know, it's kind of like the Aizen thing, where it's like, I'm so powerful now that I can't sense you, kind of thing. Like, you're not even on my level, even though you think that I'm below you, kind of thing. And you kind of see that with Seal and Unruined a little bit, that dynamic of like, who's really calling the shots here, kind of thing. And I think that kind of plays back to what you and I were talking about before, Aniki, about the potential for them being the vessel that God will either a combination, whether they one of them overtakes the other and they fuse together to become that final body for God to manifest. I really think I'm really starting to feel more and more that we're kind of headed in that direction.
Like, Unruined will be the host of God, like the
I think that's what's gonna happen. I think Unruined's gonna be like this baddie. They're finally gonna fight. They're gonna maybe beat him up, whatever, and that's gonna trigger some series of things that are gonna lead to basically them being in their form that's available for God to manifest in a body that they can then interact with. And then, much like Aniki was saying, now they've leveled up and they've learned about souls and all of these things, and they'll be able to touch God because of the fact that he chose to come in this form physically in front of them, etc., etc.
And yeah, like, I think that they both kind of have to merge, because
it can also be with Andy too, because you would also think, you know, Andy might have just lived as long as Unruined did, and we always we don't see Andy with this same concept and same mentality with the whole, like, you humans make these rules for yourselves. It's always unfair and ruin everything, but yet Andy still clings on to, like, the hope of being able to die.
And don't forget, the premise of Victor still existing in this world. Victor's not dead.
No, he's still
And
brain.
that's one of the things that came up too, is that Victor looks a lot like Unruined, where it could be argued that cause have you guys heard the theory of Victor / Andy ultimately being the vessel which God comes through?
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of
Yeah.
thinking too.
So the way I look at this at this point is that we know that you can do the doppelganger technique as a person who uses undead, which does make me wonder if maybe there's a version of, maybe the reason Unruined is so similar to Andy is that at one point during a previous loot, Undead, or like the person who's, Undead, was able to do the doppelganger ability and mentally siphoned off a different personality entirely that led to them both growing as two separate entities. And then that could actually make it explain kind of why they're so similar. And it would ultimately be that they went through multiple loops existing down these different paths as two separate negators, but ultimately still technically a similar or tied being. So
even more crazy would be if this was all a derivative of God itself from the beginning, and it's just now coming back full circle. So Undead was always actually God from the beginning.
Yeah.
Just like you said, there's been so many different siphoned off versions, and now they all basically meet Victor, Andy, Unruined, and maybe even another personality finally all meet, and it's this merger of that, and it's like the realization of like, well, the reason Andy really couldn't die is because of this.
Yeah, like
this factor here.
It would
entire
also-
existence was split up.
But then it would have been ending. It could have ended before soon, since Fuko is in love with Andy, and Andy mutually loves Fuko, and that could have been the
remember
key
the
for him
Umas,
to.
the Umas don't feel like they should be able to receive feelings. So if God is an even higher entity than that, why would God receive any type of feelings from the things that it has created? Whatever that dynamic might look like might be more so of a master slave type of situation. Like you're expected to work for and follow whatever rules I have subjected you to, kind of thing. So this is the beauty again that I love of Undead Unluck, is that the direction, the potential feels limitless. Like we know that we're heading in a direction, but the way that this can just go so many different number of ways, and I really appreciate that. But this series is still called Undead Unluck. So these two things will come to a head at some point.
Also, because that almost felt like we were wrapping it up, and I was like, wait, we can't wrap it up yet, because we got to talk about Rip.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we absolutely have to talk about Rip.
I mean, there's also the Ghost
the reemergence.
And Ghost and Unluck are in the base, and it looks.
We're finally getting the Nico backstory, which, based on that wound on her abdomen, it feels like this one's going to be
she was a former member, and
like a member of not under, but the Union, and
yeah.
I'm expecting them to have tried to have children or something like that together, because
or another big sib situation potentially, like you abandoned me for whatever potentially.
It can also establish Ghost's other abilities, where he can actually tap into souls of someone that's already dead.
Yep.
Or his manifestations of it.
It basically means that everybody who's ever been alive now has a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Unless their spirit is specifically bound to something else, like somebody, like a character like Shen, could in theory exit his current state and then become an astral being for combat, which could either increase his combat potential or lower it, depending on how that all works out.
But we'll probably get that next chapter. We could go into Rip returning.
Yeah. So first off, I'm curious to see if Rip's abilities actually work on Unruin, since he's able to heal. If he just lost this arm permanently, that would actually be a great opening for this fight. But let's talk about how he sacrificed another limb.
He sacrificed his eye.
His eye, is that what it was?
So his eye has been covered most of the series, so more than likely that's always been the case.
The eye patch, yeah.
Yeah, and then his left arm though is typically a human arm, if I remember correctly.
His right. I think
it seems like
his
it's
left arm.
With, it's fused with that what was that one?
The artifact that he uses on his legs. So it definitely seems like, which I'm hoping that also gives us a bit of an explanation, or a deeper dive into artifacts, just because we don't know a lot about them. We just know that a lot of them get to like survive cycles and loops and all that other stuff, but we don't know.
I will say that outside of Andy, he's one of my favorite characters, and his power, I think, is actually my favorite power that we have seen thus far in the series, because I think it has the greatest potential, because it's the rule breaker of like powers. I was like, oh, you broke this rule? Well, I can just I can unrip that. I can change the premise of that. Like I can just rip it all. Like Rip's ability was the first ability that really gave light to me about like, oh, the potential of what your ability is based on your ability to think about how you're going to use that. And so to me, to be able to rip anything, I feel like is just such a powerful ability. Or to make it even worse, I can make it unrepairable.
Yeah, like, and I'm like looking through to see if he had a robot arm last time we saw him during the spring arc. And
I mean, he did get his body back in a sort of way, but
yeah, he was kind of reborn, so to speak.
He had like a whole kid's body until.
I found an example. Chapter 71. You can see that his left arm is not infused with the artifact in that chapter.
Most definitely.
This is definitely. I'm not crazy.
Nah, you're not.
But I mean, like sometimes it's kind of fitting after when you're running solo and he was the only one that was doing his own thing during the union.
Yeah, we don't know what happened. They specifically said that he was off doing his own thing, and that they didn't know what he was up to. So he was probably off. We saw him like visit
the grave,
the grave of the woman we don't know. Her, I think it's Latla's sister though. But,
yeah, I think it was the sister.
Yeah, and then he also, the very key point to that final page is oh, you don't have anyone to protect? That's crazy, because I got two.
Yeah, which I'm assuming one of them is going to be Latla.
Yeah, because again, the rule of ghosts.
That's true. So like that means like the sister's ghost is technically around.
Could have potentially gone back and resolved some things in regards to that.
Or gotten by Ghost himself. Remember, Ghost eats souls, or the other ghosts of other people, and that's the whole reason why Unruin's killing everybody, is so that he can feed Ghosts as a feast, the souls and stuff like that. I still it's cool to see as a reward from the like after accomplishing that mission, but at the same time, it's still becoming more cons than pros. Keeping Uma Ghost around and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, so it's like as soon as they get her back, if they can, they probably need to just, if they can find a way to do it, they need to just kill Uma Ghost.
You mean befriend Uma Ghost? We don't kill Umas.
I mean,
we're gonna love them.
No, we need to kill them. We need to offset the balance. We want to get the benefits and they get the punishment. Last chapter.
I think Fuka is gonna come back and gonna change the whole premise of how we're interacting with everything in the world.
Oh, she's definitely gonna do it. Whether it's her being able to infuse like affection of objects, because like one of the things that I wanted to see is that basically like her kind of imbuing her affection towards her bullets and Unluck being able to be applied to, because like she's had that revolver for a while now. So if that's going to be her main like weapon, I do want her to have her own Unluck bullets, and consequently, if you can access that hook like Captain Hook in soul form, then she could in theory access her own revolver in soul form, which would allow her to
Shoot soul bullets.
right, which are infused with the Unluck. So
transfer of the Unluck.
It's Soul Eater. it's Death to Kids bullets.
Because at that point she's basically shooting raw Unluck bullets, but through soul energy. It's like a long, windy path to get Fuko the ability to further weaponize her Unluck.
Bro, you know it'd be crazy if. So what if that is considered luck in and of itself? And by creating all of these different ghosts, we're actually powering up Fuko inadvertently, because this is like the collection of the world's luck or unluck. Like that would be another wild thing. Again, just a little outlandish, but just again, the propensity for things in this series has me like anything's possible.
Yeah.
You know?
You can be really creative, so
it's still odd that a soul could still be stuck in a cage. Because if you were to like see Uma Ghost bring out Nico's companion, you see in the back, you'll see Fuko stuck in a cage, like literally Ghost's prisoner kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And Unruin is still trying to get Ghost to eat Fuko all this time, but like he's still like hesitant to do it. So I mean, I that's what I'm thinking. Like maybe your theory about the souls and his powering up Fuko might not be too well off, because if he were to eat her in the wrong time, what if you spread the Unluck soul from the collection if you got and you just killed yourself,
or absorbing her power, and like you said, in the wrong order ends up, like I said, invigorating her, because we don't know what that process for like the actual eating of souls really is. So like
there's a lot.
Eating a soul might not result in an immediate death of the soul. We don't know. We don't know that.
And let's be real, a lot of Japanese mythos has beings that eat the soul's stomachs more as prisons than actual digestive areas. So
exactly. So and we don't know.
You can also have the same effect of what happened to Seal. Like the moment that Uma Ghost eats Fuko, you get too close to the core of Uma Ghost itself, and she's already Ghost itself. It's not like a physical body. If she were to touch the core, you unlock the core.
And to a certain degree, you could argue that when you're at the point that Fuko's at, if you already exist as a soul, and we've had Andy talking about infusing the Unluck with the soul before the introduction of Uma Ghost, then effectively they can kill Uma Ghost while still maintaining astral projection if they are already astral projecting when they do it. So I think that's kind of what it's going to come down to, and it's going to unlock an extra realm of like powers to like negators, period. Kind of like how they had all access language. This will lead to them all being able to astral project by proxy, no matter what. I think is where we're going to, which means that we could truly end up with the entire battle against God being a spiritual one, or them using their souls as a way to survive the loop.
It could be both. I guess it could be both, because if they were able to strip their physical form, but their soul is still around, but they still have their abilities and that sort of stuff.
What if, another meta theory, what if Fuko is able to absorb rules by the way of this?
So she becomes a negator?
She's a negator and a Uma simultaneously at the same time. Like, what if she like adopts the rule of Ghost by inflicting the Unluck, and that in itself turns the rule of what Ghost is over in a different direction, which leads it to be something that Fuka can control freely. And now Fuka is Ghost, essentially. Mm-hmm. And she's Fuka at the same time, but she's also Ghost simultaneously.
So it would mean that Fuko becomes the regulator for God, kind of thing, right?
Well, now instead of talking about Andy being the vessel for God, Fuko is the vessel for God. Again, there's just a lot of potential for stuff. I really love that I don't have to think too hard. No matter how
Yeah.
hard I think about it, there's no way there's guarantee that I'm going in the right direction with my thoughts.
And I'm happy being there. I think a lot of people have this obsession with being able to be like, I know exactly, because every now and then I'll see somebody be like, I can't tell where the story is going, so it's automatically bad. And I'm like, why can't you tell? And this is one of those cases where it's like, because we're in a phase of the story where we're learning about the intricacies of the world, and certain aspects of it haven't interacted yet, which creates a plethora of possibilities for us to have access to, where it's like, well, I don't know which of these is going to be the end result. These are all good ideas that could work within the scope of what's been set up.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's also the idea, I think, ultimately coming to a conclusion of like, later down the road of this series is the birth. What does it mean to birth a new rule?
Yeah, like a birth a new Uma kind of thing.
I mean, whether it's a Uma or otherwise, just like a rule.
I feel like, because like when it came to Seal, there was already like Umas established. It was just next to gods. And it's like, I guess you could consider those as like God's angels, where he has like archangels, like and angels, and those are the Umas, like the more like different specific Umas that he has under his belt.
But anything could be a rule. Like, why we have? How easy would it be to have an unbreathe?
Right, like breath or Uma air,
unsight, like,
because if you look back to the Juiz and Victor stuff, there's a point where Juiz looks and like a little more androgynous, and Victor isn't as big. And then we go like a little forward, and then it's like, okay, that's when the rule of gender must have been added, because then you see Juiz with the long hair and Andy or Victor looking bigger,
a little more muscular. Yep. And again, that's another thing that we don't know. Does each cycle birth a condition and that changes, or like, okay, it's like, all right, well, you went through a cycle. Here's what's going to navigate the world in another state. So this is the new set of rules that are being added to this iteration. And maybe it's all just a challenge. Like, God's just like, well, let's see if you can do it with these new rules,
Not to mention the woman in the moon.
Gravity. On gravity. Like, there's a lot of like meta like rules of like our existence that haven't been played with yet in this series.
Because I'm just saying, because like we know there's just a woman on the moon, and we don't know really anything about her.
And we just created the galaxy technically too.
But the moon person has been there, and we know that because that's who Juiz talks to, and she's like, hey, I'll spend my I'll spend my points, but we don't know anything about who they really are.
Like, yeah, like what if again, I'm just thinking of different ways to like end society, like unreproduction. Like, hey,
oh my
you can't continue to produce entities like like there's a where you think one's allowed to learn skill. Like, there's so many things. There's so many like just like, again, like even just like playing around with the laws of physics itself has not really been dabbled with much in this series.
I mean, technically, thanks to Ruin, he already says it's already been established. Unclear, unfair, unequal, unintelligible, unsettling. Technically already been established, and it's not physical forms in that sort of way. It's just.
But these are things that are byproduct of humans basically just existing as humans.
It could also mean like, what if it's humans that created these rules itself, and these are the Umas that we just made we just made the existence of these Umas.
Yeah, I mean, even thinking back to like even like we were talking about Ayashimon earlier, the manifestation of a collective series of feelings and thoughts by people. You know, you have to believe in the spirit for it to be worth any type of value. Like, then they said that there's the reason that's the reason the seasons were so strong to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
also, I'm trying to figure out, do you guys remember when that the second time Luna appeared?
Second time was when Jules summoned her, right? The first time was we technically did see her, but we didn't. There wasn't like a full conversation. I think it was.
yeah, it was just kind of.
I think it was Fuko was having a conversation with Moon, and then the second time it was
because it was right
Andy?
before the flash. It was right before like the flash forward, the little mini flash forward, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I don't know if there's Ruins does have a mom. Remember, he doesn't. He didn't really establish of him having any parents, and he's just saying, "Oh,
Yeah,
it's just birth me this
Alves
god."
said the same thing. Second time was when Luna herself summoned Julius.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, chapter 101.
Yeah, the global warming right after. Yeah.
Oh no, humans created unglobal warming.
Right. I'm just again the idea of energy and heat being produced by life forms like this. I it's crazy because I'm constantly like every time I think of something, I'm just like, oh, this could kill humans. Like this could end the world.
This also lets us know that Luna is definitely some kind of Uma.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because
Moon.
when Juice just talked to her, she says, "And wage an assault on you all."
Mm-hmm.
And Luna says, "Very well, then I will now exercise God's authority and enact regulations to adjust the world." So that means that technically, while Seal came from the sun, Luna was the one who activated it, which means that Luna is seemingly ambivalent in the game because they went along with, sending Andy and Fuko to the future when asked for it, but they also seem to be against Andy doing whatever he feels like.
It was because it was
Not
Luna Luna
rejected
was the
no
one
longer.
was kind of like the one that summoned unsealed. No, sorry, sealed. Or it's more like she gave the warning, like, the more Umas you've killed, the more angry God's gonna get, and like the more he's pissed off, he's gonna summon something else, a regulator, to come and like establish and balance within the world. I don't know if it's like he's like the ref. Is Luna the referee, that sort of
So
stuff? I think?
MK made a cool reference that I'm reading in the chat, and I like it because I think we already both last week we kind of all collectively established that like God, the sun, there's a correlation there, and it's like, what if Luna is like the bride or the wife or the co-creator, so to speak, and is rebelling against just the ways that the sun is directing things, and then even the added point of Ruin being the product of the sun and the moon, an eclipse, if you will.
Because I feel like
Total eclipse of the heart. Anyway,
that might actually be during the time of Ragnarok, when the Earth gets too close to the sun, but it's also in between the moon within the eclipse.
Yeah, like I said, I very much so expect there to be some chapter or some arc that's around the premise of an eclipse. I very much so. I think the relevance of sun and moon and Earth have been very much so established. Earth's like the main battleground. Moon plays a role or a part in the dynamic of the way rules are established on Earth. And again, the idea that God exists either in the sun or is the sun. There's some point where these things have to all come into alignment.
Yeah, like it's clear that like these things are all set in the place. It's just a matter of us like it's a matter of us getting that information, or Tozuka just being like, now what?
Yeah. And that's it's the delivery. It's the unexpectedness even of the delivery. But I'm loving this dialogue between Alves and MK in the chat. But it's true. Is Ruin lashing out, or is Ruin acting exactly as planned?
Why not both?
I say maybe both, because he technically wants another cycle. within the world too.
He wants
Yeah.
his own cycle.
Yeah,
What if it's the
he always says
he
he says the
wants
next
to
one's gonna be the
overthrow
final
he
one.
wants to overthrow Daddy. He wants to become God.
That's kind of what I felt like too. Like he was gonna try to like be that dude, not just settle for
He birthed me to be
being
his
a
replacement
dude.
kind of thing. It brings back to the whole like he wants to be the vessel, the host of God kind of thing, just to bring him back, go round circle. But
Right, like
that would also establish God would have a physical form within like Earth, either within this cycle or to the next cycle kind of thing.
Oh, I did not realize that this was the end of the volume. This is like the so we're about to turn page into another chapter of things.
like Rip pulls up and we're
I think this would be like volume 7. No, I'm sorry, volume 10.
10, I think it's 10.
106. If it were like 10 chapters a volume, yeah, about like 10 or 11.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. I you know what's weird? I'm not very excited for this series to be animated, just to heel toe into another direction. I want to see this thing reach its completion as story, but I don't know how I feel about it being animated.
It's gonna be a weird, hard first episode of the series, especially when nobody was on board with the first chapter of Undead Unluck. It took a bit for it to like start getting it more of its popularity. People got more interested in it.
Yeah, but you can always episode 1 not from chapter 1. Especially with like people try to we were talking about putting these hundreds of episodes, hundreds of chapters into
24.
a season. Yeah, so it's like if they got 24 episodes, they wouldn't have to start at the beginning. It could just start literally in the middle of some adventure with Fuko and Andy. Then later on, we kind of continue having. As much as I hate this, they do the kind of got a high school flashback thing where you're kind of getting like two stories going at once. So you're in the B plane of like the story, but the A plane is also happening simultaneously with the B plane. So you're progressing interesting concept of where the action is, but you're also getting the backstory simultaneously at the same time.
I mean, like, I don't know if that would actually happen, but I'd rather take that over what Peach Side did with their anime, where episode.
Man, that was so confusing. I really liked the
confusing.
story. I really liked the story, but it was so confusing. Even when I knew what was happening, it was so confusing.
Like I just couldn't like pick it back up after like just random story. I have no concept. I have no understanding of what's going on in the back.
No, like I get where it was going. I watched the whole thing. Like I enjoyed it, but like it was a weird decision. I don't know if the manga is written that way because I didn't read it, but like it was a very weird decision to storyboard in that direction.
But yeah, I mean, like, not everybody gets onto a series after like the first episode of an anime. Usually, it takes like 3 or 4, like the 3 or 4.
But you want
anime
that.
test.
Some people
you want that first episode to be engaging.
You want your first episode to have a level of hook, but I also don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with not having like the craziest first episode if you specifically do a good job of having a first episode that leads to, I wonder what this like whatever question introduced within the concept of this episode is, what the answer to that will be. So like I think that Undead Unluck starts off with a punchy first chapter, but like when you think about how far removed it is from the rest of the actual story, I think that its more jarring nature is probably not worth as much as we could have got. Like it didn't set up as much as we could have gotten out of it with its first couple pages. So we'll see how like those first couple episodes go if we do get a studio, because there's some stuff that maybe might want to be placed a little differently or something like that.
I mean, like it's not gonna like use its same immature stuff that they added.
Yeah,
that's on the manga now. They're not gonna do that way, but.
I mean, JJK is a very solid first episode.
No, I mean
there's
like
there's a lot. No, I was addressing Alvarez. There's a lot of series that have really, especially in like current times, there's a lot of series that have really strong hooks from episode 1. I feel like
I don't think I was
that
fully
time I
hooked
got
with
reincarnated
JJK with
with-
first episode.
but it's like I don't know if it's a matter of it being really hooked. I think it's a matter of, oh, I will watch a second episode. Tokyo Revengers. First episode, oh, I would watch a second episode of this. Tomodachi Game, I just watched the first episode. I absolutely want to see another episode of this.
Just to see where it's going.
I think that's what a hook is. Is like the hook is like, will you come back? Are you interested in watching? Are you excited to watch the second episode after watching just the first episode? You know what series does a horrible job of doing that? Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Does a horrible job of hooking you in, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Does a horrible job because the premise is already there. You're here to watch the card game unfold, and you know that there's going to be some unique conditions to it. So Yu-Gi-Oh! By nature of just being Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the hook.
So it's
you know what I mean?
You mean the starting from season 1 instead of season 0 with Yu-Gi-Oh?
Exactly. So like the premise has already been established in your mind because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a continuous expansions of worlds and lore. Same thing with Pokemon. Like, you know, Ash is gonna go on an adventure. What's hooking about that? what's hooking about that?
You watch it because you already like Pokemon, or the concept of Pokemon appealed to you, and you're like, all right, I guess this character in this scenario with these creatures is something I can keep watching.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I will say that like the very first episode of Pokemon, like the first episode of Pokemon,
with Ash and Pikachu thing,
and the Sparrow thing in the forest. That was actually a pretty good first episode.
That was a good first episode. But you end up looking for the moments. So you then learn that what's crucial is him meeting a key Pokemon.
Yeah.
So if he starts every journey, he already has Pikachu every time. Really, the journey begins when Ash is either introduced to a new partner or a new Pokemon partner that becomes the new focus of whatever that dynamic is. So like you get Go in Journeys, and it's like, oh, the dynamic and the relationship of Go and Ash is what's carrying you through this series. And greatly done in Journeys is Go has his own journey that he wants to go on. So it's like, oh, well, now I get to see Ash do his thing. I know he wants to battle and be the best and battle this and do that. But there's this
maybe
person.
He'll finally get to be a Pokemon League champion.
Yeah, maybe he will.
In a way that matters. Looking at you, Sun and Moon. I'm tired of people bringing that up. No, it doesn't count. Especially not when the Kalos League before was Ash's most legitimate chance at a title.
We're not going to talk about Kalos League.
Anyway.
This man, the sad thing is, like, just to touch on Pokemon real quick, the sad thing is there was 3 consecutive series where it was like Ash legitimately should have been the Pokemon champion. And he just referenced it actually the other day because they had the Darkrai episode in the latest series of episodes that were released on Netflix. And I was like, oh, you remember that beating? Because it traumatized me too, Ash. It traumatized me too.
Man, the disrespect to give that man a Latios and a Darkrai.
I just know he had another legendary on that team. I just knew there was at least one more legendary on that team, which is the disrespectful part.
Darkrai and a Latios. And he still didn't beat Cynthia.
Right.
Garchomp OP.
Dragon's Dance Garchomp, bro.
If we're all good with Undead Unluck, we go move into My Hero Academia.
Yeah, we move into MHA.
That was a crazy chapter, actually. So we knew like Horikoshi was on break last week, and he was going to bring in more backstory of Dabi, aka Toya. And I love how we backtrack with the Dr. Ichiro?
Ujiko or Kyudai Garaki, originally even known as Shiga Maruta, if you want to go for the name that got Horikoshi canceled by China.
Yeah, we'll move on to it. But yeah, like we always had this theory that Dabi was somehow related towards the Doctor and for All for One. and this entire
Yeah.
chapter kind of established it in general. Like we knew like the Doctor and All for One were collecting raw materials, aka like like
Kids and people.
and quirks of people, of
Mhm.
specific quirks and stuff like that.
And there's always been the premise that Dabi and Toga are very unique to the dynamic of like the villains. Like they almost seem like they're their own main character in some sort of speaks.
So I have a video that's sitting in the needs to be edited pile now, but I said it there and I'll say it here, is that sometimes people say that Horikoshi's at his best when he writes the villains. And a lot of times what happens is Horikoshi is like his most shonen when he deals with the villains, because Dabi is your quintessential classic deuteragonist character for your typical shonen trio, but he's the villain. Just like Shigaraki is like written very much like the classic MC, but is a villain. And Toga is the trope of the lovey-dovey, love-obsessed girl in the trio group of the female lead. And if we really want to think back to like when they all three of them meet each other, it's basically like Shigaraki, I want to be the next Hokage of villains.
Whoa, I was thinking in my head, I was
Dabi.
hoping you wouldn't say it, bro.
I don't mean, because it's not a slanderous thing.
It's not.
Because what it does is that because for me, pointing out that Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura have a more similar meeting to Dabi, Shigaraki, and Toga than they do Deku, Bakugo, and like Ochako, goes to show how disingenuous and how surface level and unthought out things like Deku is just green Naruto actually are. Like you had an actual classic, like the straight up meeting like Team 7 introduced to you, and you still have such bad media literacy that you just decided shonen protagonist equals Naruto. Like, bro, it must be hard. It must be hard being that dumb.
So I really wonder if that was intentional, like in the initial inception of the birth of this world, if that was intentional. Because again, like I said earlier, I think these mangakas are really starting to play into more the reality of things and the emotional and mental states that we all actually operate in. And it's just like, yeah, this is your protagonist right here. This is your trio right here. But life comes at you hard. And your trio that should be the main, carrying the weight of the story is actually going to end up being the villains, because life, trauma, the world, you know what I mean? So I wonder how much of that was an upfront thought when just kind of birthing the conception of this world,
But yeah, like now that you bring it up, everybody's has like their own complete opposite of each other.
I mean, we've talked about this before, and this is why I've always told people, back in the war arc, I thought Todoroki was gonna die because I didn't see a reason for him to live. He didn't have a villain pair, so to speak. Even though like we knew Dabi existed, to me like that
we just
wasn't
didn't
necessarily.
But we didn't really know too much about Dabi in itself.
Yeah, we didn't know that correlation yet. So to me, that there was no like strong pairing there.
My favorite thing for Dabi and the Doctor is, so the main reason why I brought up the Himura clan is because one, we still don't know what Dabi was doing between 16 and 24. That is 8 years of his life that we don't have accounted for. But two, one of the things, because I tried to, like, I remember back when Ujiko first said, I might have met some of you in the past, but you might not remember it. I was like, is that how Dabi lived when he had those burns? And so now we see, like, yeah, he met Dabi before, and that's part of why he became attached to him and was like taking an interest in giving Dabi so much props, because he was familiar with Dabi from the time Dabi was 16. And
even the way Dabi's role is as almost a second command for the League of Villains, I think that's even more exasperated based off of this chapter's reveal of their relationship.
Let me put it this way: I got an entire video about Shigaraki and Dabi's dynamics. That's the one that's in the editing shop. I need to make sure I get that out this upcoming week. I need to stop playing around.
So would that mean that there was actually never an opposite for Bakugo in a way for the villain side then?
Because Bakugo's rivalry with Deku was always just meant to be the closest to classic.
Bakugo was pre-Deku. So Bakugo was the initial, and I keep telling people this, y'all hate on Bakugo as much as you want. Bakugo was the real main character of the earlier arcs of the series in the world that was existing. In the dynamic of the way the villains and the heroes were interacting, Bakugo was seen as the key factor, not Deku. And then it's later on as we start to extrapolate on All for One versus One for All that we're like, oh, these two serve this role, and you realize that Bakugo's role is that of more of a teacher. Again, even in the past 3 chapters, a lot of things that you see Deku do is like the whole flying in the air thing is based off of him cherry picking off of Bakugo. In reality, I'll keep telling y'all, Bakugo was supposed to inherit that ability. If Deku never existed and All Might did not go ahead and give Lemilio that power, but he took a year to kind of assess this next batch of people, it would have been between Baku and Lemillion getting that power, and it would have been Bakugo. I don't care what anybody says. I don't think he was gonna pick Lemillion.
No.
They would have not gone with the story of, all right, if you already had a quirk established, then and if you were to inherit the One for All quirk, your life expectancy decreased more than half in that sort of situation. That means they would have not established the 4th and the other heroes and that sort of stuff. But
yeah. And again, now that we know things about the vessels and how things work, it was pertinent for the next user to not be someone with a quirk. It was very pertinent. That's why I think that's where the certain appeal for All Might was, and why we see, again, I think it's not just because All Might's alive. I think it's because of All Might's quirklessness that he is represented as a vestige the way that he is represented. If you think about it, it's not even just like he's in the vestige. He exudes a power, like he's an aura form. It's not even like humanly. Like everyone has like a humanly.
They said he was the embodiment of one for all. Like because of his quirklessness, he gave the One for All quirk a body kind of thing to be able to communicate with everybody.
So my stance on it has kind of been that, and even when you think back to what they talked about during the chapters, Yagi and stuff, where they straight up are like, we are all like hard quirk data. Like effectively someone took the DNA, like the quirk DNA section of their genetic code, cut, paste, plugged in, this is now a part of this data stream, boom. All Might not having an actual quirk factor in his DNA structure led to him imbuing an actual piece of his consciousness into it. And that consciousness seems to be enabling the other consciousness, their ability to move around, even though I don't think, like you mentioned, due to a lack of an actual individual quirk, he will ever have a proper vestige. Because if you're going to have that vestige, whether the person is alive or not, it shouldn't matter if you already have that quirk within, that information is already stored within the quirk. That's all that matters, is whether or not that file is there. So it just seems like All Might won't have a full vestige, but so that could be why, like some people have speculated that All Might won't die. So that could tie into it, like since All Might isn't going to have a real vestige anyway, or if All Might died, you could just give him a vestige. There's no real reason to kill him. You could argue that that's narratively what the decision comes down to.
But I mean, I kind of like his role now, where he's like.
There's also the parallels, right? So again, talking about like the villain to the hero thing. So it's like All for One still exists. Thus, as a result, All Might still exists.
And it seems like the parallel between like his All Might's new role now, he seems more of the sideline commander of chief when it comes to planning and organization, that sort of stuff. And that's what wasn't that what Yagi used to be? He used to be a police officer, and like he had friends within like the force and police and like commissioner and stuff like that. It kind of like brings up like, hey, you can actually go back into like the police force, even though you're quirkless, you actually are a great leader. You could a great organizer and trainer and everything. You can be the teacher in establishment. And it seems like instead of killing the character, we can literally make them into a teacher. Like you guys said, Bakugo is like the teacher for Deku, for him to be a better hero, for the better main character of the story and that sort of stuff. And I actually like this
Mm-hmm.
because like we don't really need death to be fully established. And even though like Night Eye was the one that died, and we don't hear back from him, and it's just like it's not like Lemillion would always like appears more. He himself could be established main character himself, but it seems like it's the most common shonen trope where your teacher has been training you for so long, and now your teacher has died, and now you're on your own to be your own hero for his establishment kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But with My Hero Academia, with Horikoshi and everybody can still live. Everybody still can serve a purpose one way or another, and they don't just have to die. The physical form don't need to die in itself, and you give a whole visual visage of the quark fire in itself. I that's one thing. Like I think Horikoshi has shown us where a character does not need death. Death does not need to make character development. They can already have the character development, as well as still have that person serve more of a purpose later on throughout the entire story.
Yeah. So to circle back to the death thing in the war arc, I'm just gonna say this. Just it wasn't just that I picked Shoto. It was there was a potential for 5 people in my head to die. And I navigated that he would be the most interesting and dynamic death based off of the relationships that we had seen in the story to this point. Right after him would have been, obviously, Injin, his dad. Either one of them were my top 2 picks to die. The other 2 would have been Gran Torino and Bakugo. Bakugo was way too popular to kill off, but it was an option in my head. So he was the least of them, but he was still a very big option in my head.
You want to know my reason for being anti-Bakugo getting killed?
I don't want Bakugo to ever die. That's my son. Protect him at all costs.
Well, I was going to say is that anybody who takes the role of a narrator in the story should not be dead.
Should not be dead. I agree.
And with Bakugo narrating at one point, Spinner narrating at one point, Deku narrating, and I feel like there might be one other character who's gotten some time to narrate.
Didn't Uraka narrate for her battle with Toga? That sort of stuff?
There's a Uraka Toga kind of like on and off narration.
Like during the war arc kind of thing. Like it was in her own mind thing.
And then the next person would actually be who died, ironically, was Twice.
Yeah.
Right, Twice.
But it's almost like they let him narrate to die, so...
It's also true. Because, like, Hawks... Yeah, because he was in parallels of narrating with Hawks as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so...
But anyway, this chapter, we learned 11 years ago during the fire, technically, Dabi or Toya had regret of what he did and tried to manage to survive. And then along comes All for One with the suit.
So the thing about this is that it does basically solidify that All for One was the guy who brought Tenko home.
Mm-hmm. And
now,
sorry, go for it.
What that does now, does that up the odds of him giving Tenko decay? I can't really say, because the idea, because like it seems to be that it's partially the quirk you're born with that leads to these impulses and ideas. So, but I mean, it could be that
I think it's
that's
more.
One that
I think what the doctor explained, like he just has this interest with people who are twisted, like something wrong with their head.
Yeah.
Even the doctor says like he was born with a crack. Like, wait, no, maybe not a crack. Maybe he had everything with him. He's just I guess a little broken, and All for One just always has this interest of broken people.
Mhm. And that's the other thing is that he specifically keeps talking about how people are born naturally twisted or they have this naturally twisted nature within them.
Mm-hmm.
And so if he gave Tenko the quirk, it wouldn't make sense for him to say stuff like that to Ujiko when it was just the two of them.
Mhm.
But I don't know.
I think another thing is also the parallel that we've been being presented of Maruko with Bakugo as well over the past
and vigilantes and
just I was trying to say like really it's been since the war arc in parallel between both mangas. So
so Dabi never really burned himself from the first place, or he did burn himself, but they regenerated his skin.
They gave him regenerative grafts.
But like, he's like, even though like Toya had this like regret, and he still wants to show his father that he has to prove something to him. He still burned down the hospital with like the kids and the teachers, and this hospital was one of the hospitals that the doctor was using for.
Did y'all peep that parallel with Shigaraki's backstory?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. The potential being a Nomu, the not having proper memories and kind of being told right off the bat that like your dad, like nope, your family stuff.
Your family don't care. Well, you care. Your family thinks you're dead, so they kind of have to move on without you. And yet, like, it's still hard for a person to grasp where they had to move on without you for over 3 years. You become a whole different kind of person, and you yourself don't know it yet. You have All For One here trying to tell you this. It's like, we could take care of you. You could be one of our so and so like host body minion. You can have a serve a purpose under us. But Dabi just went, nope, I don't give a fuck. I don't want to be part of your gang. I just want to see my father. I just want to talk to him again. And even after 3 years of him missing, like some things never change. Where Endeavor was still abusing Shoto. Endeavor was angry enough that he was burning everything. The abuse was still there. Nothing really changed. Like I guess what he really saw was that Shoto's Endeavor is still focusing on Shoto after all these years, training him.
Yep, nothing is different.
But again,
at least that's how he sees it.
I hate to give Ejin any type of grace, but it's the fact that, and I'm glad that they did show that at one point, that we know that he did go searching. But the point was like, he was devastated by losing Shoyo. And that actually has a lot to do with the level of trauma that was inflicted on top of Shoto. It was because that, like, I've already lost one son. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's not still fully even has been flushed out or proceed in the way that the story has been told to this point. But
didn't it with Endeavor's backstory? Like, he had no other way
I think that they did, but I don't think the audience at large really understood that, because everyone just hates him. Everyone hates Endeavor that much that no one cares to show any type of resemblance of empathy towards him. And I'm also on the team that Endeavor shouldn't be forgiven flat out for the things that he chose to do. He's a monster, bro. I
don't expect Endeavor to be forgiven, and I expect that, because I kind of feel like we got to complete the parallels between Dabi and Shigaraki. And Dabi and his father Endeavor can never ever work it out, because if you think about it, when we got Shigaraki coming back from the dead, he actually made it a point to decay he was happy to kill the father echo, or the father vestige in his brain. So
what's more interesting is that I think Dabi was the one that All For One was never able to predict.
He had the negator ability unbrainwash.
he was the wild card that somehow turned to their side. But then, like, it's we like they even said like he was supposed to only live for 1 month. The only thing we ever did for him was to regenerate his skin, give him a new voice box, even though he burnt it and he doesn't sound the same as he did before.
Mm-hmm.
And like technically he wasn't supposed to have his fire quirk, right? Like they said that he
Yeah,
wasn't.
he wasn't. He lost everything. The
But
ability to feel, the ability to sense, the ability to use his abilities. Like he literally burnt out.
Like,
and yet he still has that kind of tenacious uh, anger or rage towards himself to keep living.
It's almost like the rage is the fire itself that fuels the quirk.
oh yeah, no, his emotionality is heavily tied to, and if you remember, he was like, man, when I get worked up, I'm really amazing. I wish I could stop crying though.
Mm-hmm. And Ray talked about that too as well. He mentioned about like the emotions, people still not trying to understand that these quirks are deeply tied it's more than just abilities. It's really tied to the psychosis of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
But it does bring me interest. Like Dabi would have been, even if Dabi did die, he would have gotten turned into a Nomu in itself.
I don't think so. I think if he died, I think so. The Nomu need the structure of the body still, is my understanding, and I think that he would have literally disintegrated and his body would have been useless, which is why he was dubbed a failure as far as being a potential seed, because his body could not physically maintain.
It's also interesting where like his body is supposed to decay in itself and rot throughout all these years too. But now I'm thinking like he had to burn it to prevent it from rotting so that it still clings together.
The way I'm looking at it is that just like Shigaraki is somebody who went beyond the expectations of the doctors and the people working on it, so too did Dabi exceed the expectations, because both of them are people who are ultimately experimented on. Their bodies are modified by the doctor. They just have very different body modifications, with Dabi's technically just being the flesh and stuff. And that's kind of why what's kind of cool about this is that the nose and stuff that's burned off, you could argue that all that's left that's facing, like as far as like what we're looking at now, is Toya, because the face grafts are burned off now, the arm ones are burned off. You can still see some skin on his fingertips on the last page, and you can still see the skin on his forehead, but all this, the parts that are replaced by All for One and the Doctor are pretty much been used up.
It's so insane, the mentality of where Dabi's coming from, because like first the training from Endeavor to learn that he's the failure of his own quirk, he can't use it, and then goes into his rage fit, gets brought back for All for One for his back part, like, and then you still tell him like you're still a failure within the clone from here. It's like getting told you're a failure in every different stages and every different point in time, and you yourself are seeing the same thing. I think the moment when he came back, that was like the same moment when the mom was sent to the hospital, and that's when Endeavor was in rage mode. That's where he blamed Shoto for this because of the injury and that sort of stuff. And if I remember that scene, because like Endeavor got so angry that he almost like burned the house kind of thing. He got like the wood and he was like beating up Shoto during that time.
Well, and that's the thing, is that he's always like, almost every flashback that we see, Endeavor has like that fire, like a kendo stick or something, and there's a bit of extra fire on the floor. I don't know fully why Endeavor was that loose with the flames, but I'm assuming it was manageable enough.
What do you think? Like when he gave like Dabi also gave more of his dialogue too. He's been watching battle moves, and I've seen them all over and over. I'm guessing him learning from Endeavor's videos. Every time he saves a day, he was learning from him to learn more about his own quirk. It seems to the point where like even though Dabi was supposed to have nothing, he started all over again with his own blue flame quirk. and build his way back up into the person that he is right now. It's very impressive. It kind of reminds me of the Ubel Blatt manga. Like, that rage is what drove the main character to keep going for his revenge story, and his obsession for revenge is what keep just somehow just clinging to still in life and never towards the death. But then now every time he's fighting, he's always fighting like as if it's his last day, his last breath, because he knows he's gonna die in whichever fight. So that's why I'm kind of thinking that Dabi will die, but it's because he finally lets go of that, like, his anger, but it's that same anger is what kept him like grounded into life, and I guess it's like Shoto has to be the one to like help release some of his anger.
It's the prisoner of Azkaban effect, where you're losing your mind, you're struggling, you're at the end of your rope, so you cling on to one detail to keep yourself focused and give yourself drive. And so my personal thing is that at most I see Toya finally understanding that Shoto wanted a friendship with him, because it almost feels like he doesn't recognize that his family wasn't, like, none of them were trying to be favored over him or anything like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It seems more like he's just kind of assuming everybody was cool with the system, and they weren't. It's just that they also weren't being, like, as heavily abused as they could have been when they just kind of rolled with it. And so they were cool with that deal.
And then you come to the point where Dabi's is he calling Endeavor that thing?
Yes.
Like, yeah, he just called him, like, yes. Every time that thing saved the city, every time that thing got a boost in popularity, every time that thing does something that's positive, that everybody see as positively fake good, but they don't know him behind the scene, it just pumps my heart and it's making me angry. Everything. It's his drive is just ferociously dangerous, and it's even what the doctor in All for One said. His powers and his flame as a person is something that we can't even control or to be able to maintain or anything like that.
Also, and that's one of the things that I like about between Dabi and Shigaraki as well, is that if you look at Shigaraki's quirk too, when his decay was actually going at full power, he did blow off some of his arm. So it kind of feels like if both of them are going at max power, they're slowly wearing themselves down.
It's literally like they both had their own establish of what they believe is plus ultra is. And their plus ultra comes to the part where even body parts are going to be sacrificed in every single moment in battle. And in this case, Dabi knew that he's going to die. His entire skin is all going to be burned up and melted. He has nothing. He really is the evil side of nothing left to lose.
Like as you put it, the evil version of plus ultra. 100%, I would agree with that assessment.
The evil version of plus ultra, indeed.
Plus chaos, I believe it's called.
I like that. I am a fan of this term, plus chaos.
It's also crazy where he doesn't establish any sympathy for Shoto, even though like he just sees him 3 years ago still being beaten, still have no sympathy, just probably seeing like your father is just giving you all the attention and all the training, even though you have no idea what happened within the 3 years that you were gone.
He wouldn't be getting beaten if you weren't the masterpiece and the most valuable creation. I'm not saying that I agree with that mindset, just that is where Dabi is coming from in this scenario.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, he's, getting beaten, but at least Dad still cares about him. But also, what Toya wanted was for that abuse to stop. So you come home and see that nothing's changed.
Yeah, you would hope even that if you're assumed dead, that by seeing that your
father your
ambitions were burnt out in me, that you would have at least maybe course corrected and maybe make amends and treat your family better. I think really he wanted to go back and see things being in some worse. Know what I mean?
And yet it didn't.
3 years, like my debt meant nothing. It's not even like you moved on without me, as much as it's like my debt meant nothing to you because you didn't change. You didn't grow. You've gotten worse, and we know that to be fact. Like when he died, when he was deemed to be dead, Todoroki had to deal with even more harsh treatment.
Mm-hmm. It's like he kept comparing him to Toya of how hotter flames his is, how stronger he was. His abuse towards his wife was so much worse. But that was all he knew. That's all That's all Endeavor knew to do, because he doesn't know how to express emotions. He didn't know how to at least be a better father. At least learn from Toya's death to, like, let go of your obsession and start being a better father or start being a better person. But nope, all for nothing. But at least, and it's because of that, Dabi officially said, yeah, Toya, this is where Toya died, and this is where Dabi really birthed. Is Endeavor never changing from the person he is, and gave my death with my death of no meaning, give everything, no, me being the failure of everything, including the being a failure of my father not being able to be a changed man, and I couldn't take it anymore. That means Toya meant nothing to you. It's insane. And so the next evolution of Dabi's power, is he melting All Might's statue? Like, it was kind of hard for me.
We talked about it last week, I think. If you re-look at the sequence, you see him take off, ascend, slowly hover above, and then stomp down. Because effectively, he's got his head placed on All Might's. His foot is placed on All Might's head while his hand is dry. His foot is going through the hand. Similar to like when Genius tried to wrap him up, and he just immediately melted his way out.
Yeah, I don't know, like, how much training Shoto would have done to been able to at least try to cool it down. But we know, like, the faster it burns, the more even Dabi's face is almost completely burned up now. Not much of his forehead is left, and his fingertips.
Oh yeah, no, that's why I was mentioning, like, the parts that are still Toya are the parts that we're gonna see really go off now, and the demon claw attack that it looks like we're in for is pretty sweet, because it's specifically high density concentrated burst on his fingers when you look at the drawing. So,
which makes sense, because he says the flash fire heat fists.
You also you notice that there's like the essence of disintegration, but the form is still maintained.
Yes,
I think that's also like another relevant. I think we'll very much see what that end up ultimately being, because again, there's a fist involved, right? Even in the title of it, so like there has to be some form taken, whether it's a physical or not form, but some form has to be maintained. So, and again, Dabi's point is, like, Dabi isn't trying to die without getting his point across. So these next couple chapters of My Hero are gonna be chef kiss. I know it.
I mean, I still think Dabi's gonna die in the end.
I think there's still a way for him to live. I am actually going to go against the grain, and I hope that he lives. I hope that there's something there else. Because I think there's this tie-in of what a real hero is, and being a hero for the villains as well. And I would like to, on that premise, see somehow, some way, maybe Dabi dies, but the rebirth of Choya. Yeah. Again, I can see that that's not what the direction that feels like it's going, but I would greatly appreciate that direction.
But at least we'll know, like, this is the final fight. But we actually thought that Endeavor and Toya and Shoto has to be the one to fight Dabi, but I think
I will also
Shoto,
say I want Endeavor to die still. I'm still at I get the whole him living out and making up for it, but I kind of want him to die. If any one of the three of them is gonna die, I would rather it be Endeavor. It would also take away from Dabi getting the satisfaction that he wants, because he wants Endeavor to live with the pain. So if Endeavor somehow came in and he ended up being the one that was sacrificed instead,
So
again, I think there's other directions to go with this.
It's how you bring them together, because the whole point was to separate them. And what I think saying that Endeavor living with Dabi dying hurts Endeavor more than Endeavor dying would ever cause Endeavor suffering. My personal stance on Endeavor, and this has been one of my stances for a while, is that like suicide is like this idea that's been like hovering in the background of My Hero Academia for a while now. And to me, NG is like one of the perfect characters to have that be the conclusion of his arc. One, because the Todoroki is an extremely like traditional Japanese name, hence why the Todoroki estate has that vibe, why Shoto's room during the room tour is built the way it is.
Really classic, yeah.
And you know, when you had like the Hamura clan that were like, we were from a prestige, like it just seems like all this build up, and then with what Endeavor says to the high-end Nomu during the Pro Hero arc, when he was like, you are me from some twisted past, or perhaps me from an alternate future, be at peace and burn away. One, that same line can now be transposed onto Dabi, who came to pick up Hood and has become that monster representing his past and the anger and all that other stuff that would have continued on through the future. So Dabi kind of has to burn away for that, but for Endeavor himself to also lose his life because he's given his family, you know, a house away from him. He's given, like, the only thing he can do now to give them any more space is die. Like, that's really all he can do at this point, besides just going to prison and staying there instead of protecting society. But you could argue that society won't be able to afford that. But then you have the argument, you know, to counterbalance that with, will Shoto be at a point now where you could argue that he is above Endeavor, or at least on par with Endeavor, where Endeavor can step down and serve time if that be the case.
Even more in the
without it being so detrimental, you know.
Even more like forward fast, like way past in the future, would be Endeavor serving time. Like, just putting another spin on Endeavor serving time. Shoto just giving up on being a hero because Shoto realizes that things have been resolved now, and he's just like, well, I'm gonna take care of my family. Maybe he starts like a business or something. Even again, I've kind of like talked about playing around with the fact that mental wellness isn't something that's present in the My Hero Academia world. Maybe Todoroki steps down from the hero world and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna worry about the mental well-beings of the heroes, and he starts something in that kind of lines. So like the Todoroki is actually, even that family line is actually even removed completely from the idea of being a hero, and we can see the birth of something else in this meta world of My Hero Academia in the semblance of some type of like mental wellness facility or program. Again, this is just cool. It's because it's just like you said, especially with the name Todoroki, there's something very important and dynamic about that choice and that decision with that family name.
And like you said about the mental health, we already had Culture Festival kind of be like, no, people need to take time, and then this stuff with Deku, where they were like, no, heroes need to take time.
Emo Deku.
Like, yeah, like where they're like, no, dude, you need to chill out and still take breaks, still make sure you're resting.
And shower. Please shower, Deku.
Yes.
I still think you smell musty. I don't care what they did to you.
No, one of the funniest things, like I straight up said it on Twitter. I was like, it's ironic how people went weeks and months talking about, haha, Deku needs to take a shower. And the second he gets brought back to UA, and people in verse also say, yes, Deku is stinky from doing all this and needs to take a shower. Everybody's mad about it.
It's weird. It was absolutely weird. I think a lot of people also didn't have a realistic concept of how much time had passed during the period of time that Deku was in his emo phase. Because I think a lot of people thought that it was maybe just like days. Like, they were joking, but I think people genuinely thought it was only a couple of days at a time. It was like, no, like it's been, I kept telling people, it's been at least a month. It's been at least a month of time that had passed by, even before we got it confirmed. I was like, you have to think about when he left, what happened, the things, the contextual clues that have been told to us. We knew that at the bare minimum, 3 weeks had passed. At the very bare minimum of when Deku is in his dark emo phase, 3 weeks had passed. And then there's at least another week of him doing his vigilante hero-esque work that he was doing. So effectively, again, about a month of time had passed.
So, like, the dude had been out there his showers were in the blood of his enemies
The
and his
blood
own.
and the dirt of the soil of the lands and the blood of his enemies, the debris of buildings falling on him.
Like
that's what he baited in.
Like he was like, "Ooh, this is a salt scrub," and it's just a bunch of sawdust. Like, sorry, that wasn't where he was in life.
I'm injured. I guess I'll just wrap this bone and arm back into place. It's fine.
Like, yeah, he wasn't trying to do any of that. Like, he was focused. That black whip form was apparently active for 24 hours. So, which, man, I need to see my boy mid-flight. I need to see him do something to give himself a little boost. Maybe flex your toes a little and kick out a toe smash or something. Deku, come on.
I think he's just not being so. Deku suffers from being smart, and I think because of that, sometimes it hinders his creativity with his abilities.
Oh, definitely.
I think that's kind of what you're seeing there. I think he's just not being as flexible, and the vestiges tell him that too. Like you're not thinking about this the right way. You just kind of want to throw it out here without really getting to understand what these powers are and how to use them. They're supposed to be an extension of you. They're supposed to be like a reflex the way that you use them, not just some extra bonus skill that you can throw out whenever you want.
Well, they were like, you put too much respect on these quirks. You treat your quirks like they're the be all end all, and in reality, the quirks that you've been given are simple ones that are just kind of juiced up. And because it's like when you see a simple smoke bomb like being used, if it's like in a room, then yeah, it's going to fill up the whole room. But if it's outside, it's going to do 20, 30 feet, small area, bit of coverage, but not like but now what Deku has is the ability to flood an entire city block and then some with smoke, which goes beyond like the scope of just a simple small scale smoke grenade. But it's just like if you just basically had like a smoke bomb for all its purposes with the intent to just, and he can do that in the rain, which means when it's not super windy, he can just generate a bunch of smoke and go about his day pretty quick. And in a fast and unhurry, he doesn't actually need to be able to see anymore if he has Black Whip combined with Danger Sense for auto tracking to help take down some of his bad guys. So yeah, he was doing a lot of stuff, but what that was just one big extended training arc, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Are we good for My Hero? Should we go on to One Piece?
I mean, we don't have Vash, and I know he's hoping to get here, but he's just gonna have to pull up.
I mean,
at the end, like he did last time.
Nah, boss said he's just gonna have to. Yeah, he's gonna have to do his little collar bit again because we ain't got too much more. We done talked about everything but the chapter at this point with My Hero.
So,
all right, hit him up. He's in his last chance, but then I guess we could start without him for now.
Hey, because Kendall and I can talk about this cover story because we have been talking about it.
Yeah.
2 intruders in Pudding's home of Chocolate Town. So one thing that I will say that I think a lot of people are forgetting is that Pudding is actually in Wano.
Yes, very much so forgetting that Pudding is in Wano.
So yes, they may have gone to her house. They may have wanted her and her 3-eyed clan powers, but those are not in Whole Cake at present. They are in Wano, which is more than likely going to lead to a good chunk of that territory being damaged and likely a cracker or what was his name? Not Katakuri, because Katakuri's to go. I wouldn't forget Katakuri.
The other brother, the other
Snack.
Yeah.
So actually, I could very well see this resulting in like a cracker injury and Snack death. The reason why I say a Snack death is because he wasn't considered that important, but also Snack is the one who fought what's his name? Uroge, and he fought Kid. So he lost to both of them before Luffy even got to Whole Cake. So Snack just kind of being forced to take L's to the worst generation just kind of seems like a natural progression for the last 2 to 3 years of his life, just catching L after L from the worst generation to put in the pack.
So let me remind y'all that Crew came with 2 Wano.
Oh, you got the page up?
So they were saying that Alves was saying that put in hasn't been shown in Wano, and that's not necessarily innately correct. It's that we lost track of the crew. We know the crew did actually make it onto Wano, but we lost track of the crew because Big Mom was separated from the crew. But there was a dispatch crew with Big Mom that came to Wano.
Let's see.
I don't even want to think back to how far ago that was. That's got to be in the 800s. I'm exaggerating, but also not really like that. That's literally like way at the beginning of the season.
Let's see.
Yeah, Smoothie is there. But we don't see who's all on the ship is kind of what I'm getting at. But we're basically, I'm trying to remember the context. There is something that is stated that alludes that Pudding was not left behind on the island, because they kind of point out like who was left back to defend, if I'm not mistaken.
I should be able to find it. I just gotta.
Doesn't she have the whole go through mirrors dimension kind of thing? So she could
That's
just go
Brulee's
back and
ability.
forth? Oh, pure.
Let's see.
Yeah, no, but Pudding, I think Pudding is still key to that. So it's like, it's not that Pudding isn't present. It's like you said, the impatience. Chapter 999.
I'm looking for the chapters right now to see if I can find the chapter that it was.
Elvis says you're thinking of the end where Big Mom mentions the fish fruit.
Chapter 930. Let's see. Well, at least that's the chapter where, apparently, that's the chapter where King kicks the Big Mom pirates off the waterfall, which is wild.
Let me go back. I'm gonna check 999 while we're reading this.
Oh wait, maybe I was thinking of what's her face, the really annoying one. Because let's see, Daifuku, Smoothie, Flampe, Peril Sparrow, Mountain Door,
999.
Raisin.
Yeah, that's the Ace flashback.
Okay, so let's see, Raisin.
Yeah, I don't think it was 999.
No. 999 was an Onigashima centric chapter.
Yeah, that was King. That was the flashback with Ace.
Let's see.
Raisin's name. Or Raisin's name.
He was a swordsman that oh yeah, I guess that should do it. Put in. Most people remember Raisin as that dude with the design that's way better than it has to be. He's got like nice army lapels and stuff like that.
I think it's even deeper. Like I said, I really think this is like going back into like the 800s, guys. I don't know if we might have to do some research and swing back around to this.
Yeah,
but
I'm just like looking to see if I can remember the last time she was shown.
Wano started at 909 though.
Wano did start at 909. You're correct.
Let's see.
I was just, again, the exaggeration that it's the beginning of Wano. I don't think it's because when do we see Big Mom? 920 something.
Okay, it says she should be in page 9, chapter 930, page 8.
Oh,
so that means she is supposed to be on the ship when Lin is climbing the waterfalls. I'm trying to zoom in to see, because I thought I saw her on here. So I guess if we go watch the clip from the anime, it might show you too.
There's Charlotte.
We apologize for the long pause, guys. We're just backtracking some research.
Give you guys as accurate of information as possible.
We apologize for the dead silence.
No, just
it's not really dead silence. We're just really trying to really like rectify this. Oh, that's ironic. You know what's also 9:30? It's Sanji with the gear.
Yeah, the first time he puts on the
or right before he puts it on.
Raid gear. Raid gear. But then mentioning Mama is always on her trip. Let's experiment. Makes me think the cover story is also happening in current time.
Yes, absolutely yes. And I've been assuming this. So in the story they kind of mention just like when they start talking about Sanji, in his final his big fight moment basically. I had the feeling that things with Germer were happening coincidingly with this, and I keep saying we're underestimating the amount of things that are happening simultaneously with what's going on in Wano right now. But that is essentially what we're talking about, is that Wano, I mean not but Cake Island is not fully manned, and if it was going to happen, now would be when these things are happening. That's been presented in that cover story.
Yeah, it's just a perfect opportunity. Like it's a waste
and it's public knowledge that Big Mom is not on the island.
Yeah, like she straight up, they know she said, "I will pull up on you in Whole Cake or in Wano because I specifically am chasing Straw Hat Luffy."
Mm-hmm. And then there was the wedding that was supposed to happen, or the unification that was supposed to happen. So there was a lot of big planning that was public, and we already know there was plenty of spies on Whole Cake. So there was already information was being leaked left and right around Big Mom's movements, essentially.
So it's like we know that that's where she was moving. It's just a matter of who's going to exploit that opportunity. And with somebody like Blackbeard pulling up and having, and then which I've seen somebody say, like, what if Blackbeard has the moon god fruit? It would make sense to me because of something Kaido said this chapter that I think bugs me a lot more than it seems to bug other people, is Kaido asking, "Who are you?"
Who are you? Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And like that kind of bugs me.
And that's the second time, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if he said it, "Who are you?" explicitly out loud, but he had already kind of had the thought of like, what is this, or who are you really, before he had ever said it out loud in the previous chapter. So yeah, that definitely caught my attention as well.
Because you got, because when he says that, it's like, okay, are you implying that you can sense something else, or something's really funny about Luffy? Like something has to be different about Luffy to make that question worth asking. Yeah.
And he tries to pitch it as like, again, the understanding of like the devil fruit having its own ability. And then because he immediately heel toes and he goes to heel turns and goes to my friend, like almost, he didn't say my friend, but he's almost like cordial. He's like super cordial and formal, or informal with Luffy rather. And it's like, this is what you call an awakening.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I feel like it would be weird for Oda to have the Gorosei mention how they have never been able to get their hands on the Gomu Gomu no Mi, and also have them say zone fruits have a will of their own. Then have Kaido ask Luffy, "Who are you?" And for there to be no presence within the devil fruit that's being detected here.
And also I think the concept of the idea, which is I think super big to some of the stuff that we were theorizing last week, Aniki, about the fact that maybe in doing the awakening, you are actually awakening whatever the spirit or entity that is tied to that fruit is. So again, it's a lot. I think also we have to keep in mind that Big Mom is very vengeful, just to kind of go back to the point of being there and wants to get their way all the time, and knows that Sanji is with Straw Hat on this island and is still adamant about like forcing Sanji into like slaveness and reproduction essentially. So I again I really think there's a lot of things, even if we can't fully go find that specific grab, I think there's a lot of things that point to the fact that Pudding was on that ship.
I'm trying to figure out when she, like, if she was for sure, because I don't want to be a liar.
You guys
I don't want to be a liar.
You guys saying that the personification of the devil fruit in itself, it's reminding of me from Moon Knight. Everybody's having their own mark. We have a more powerful self.
Well, the thing about it is just we've seen that zones and the zone guards at Impel Down were unnaturally awakened. Mm-hmm. So you could argue that there's a chance that effectively by them being forced into awakening, the animal took over.
Yes, exactly.
And it didn't but it didn't have the intellect to properly do all the stuff that it's doing. And so it's like they got dumbed down.
It's unanchored to the reality of what the individual would bring to that. So they're literally a wild beast.
So we could have this secondary consciousness, this devil fruit mind active in the background. And that's perfectly okay, because Luffy will have been, his mind, as Kaido stated, caught up to and is capable of dealing with
everything is caught up to being able to deal with the power. Physically, mentally, you are at a state that you can handle it. And again, it's Kaido narrating all of this. He's like, who are you? I see this. Clearly you have reached this pinnacle, this point to justify this being this. So it's like Kaido is like asking, who are you? But he understands very actively what is going on here.
Yeah, and that's why I think he's asking that question, to make sure that Luffy didn't lose himself to his awakening. Because he said himself, this awakening reminds me more of a Zoan type. So he might be suspecting that there's some kind of mythical zone at play, or, just he might have some suspicion that this is a more zone type awakening, since it seems to be functioning like one, even if it functions like a paramecia plus a zone type. So he's like, I can't tell which one this is, but since it seems to be both, it's probably some high tier kind of awakening. He seems to be actually functioning as a person within this, so I guess I'll rock with it. This seems to be Luffy.
Yeah, and I think Kaido's really just trying to come to his grips around it, because, again, Kaido thinks that he is Joy Boy. So what other option is there? Yeah, even the part of him that's kind of like giving up hope on certain things, and maybe in regards to around that aspect, he still definitely believes that he is the chosen one.
Like, that was his whole belief and the whole reason his crew is what it is. Him getting the fruits and naming the smiles,
everything. Yep.
So, this is what he's after, which is part of why, as much as people are like, Oda would never, I can see Kaido ultimately yielding to Luffy because Luffy doesn't have to kill Kaido, and if Kaido's whole thing is to be Joy Boy or find Joy Boy, then when he's met with this conflict of all right, well, I was trying to signal the new start of the world. That was the original intention behind all this, and I had settled for destroying it. Now what's my move? What's my thought process? Because this whole him growing to have more and more respect for Luffy throughout the fight thing has to have some kind of payoff. Because this is the most happy we've seen somebody be to fight Luffy.
Besides Katakuri.
Yeah.
So, but I doubt Kaido's gonna take a dive for this one, to his fight this time.
Which is why I almost feel like something else has to come into play. But I'm a big believer in SSG showing up in Wano too, so.
Everyone's gonna show up, bro. It's gonna be awesome. This is the climax to a fight, but it's not a climax to the moment.
Well, I'm pretty sure Oda or one of the editors said something like, when the final villain appears in Wano, which suggests that someone other than Kaido could be the actual final villain. And all I can really say is we do have, at the very least, like the potential for more CP, like Cypher Pole agents to show up. So having a bunch of Cypher Pole agents pull up later on or towards that, and then maybe some people that are even bigger or higher caliber than the one that we lost, then I guess it could make sense. But then
Yeah.
who's going to be in condition to fight these people is a really important question too.
I think what's going to be funny is I think that I can see other entities stepping in and defending and protecting Luffy and his crew. People that you may not necessarily expect to do so. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, but I believe Smoker and Toby are part of Fujitora's his fleet right now, if I'm not mistaken. And like I said, like I keep reminding y'all, Fujitora is right around the corner, chilling, camped up, cooling.
He's got he can't still be injured from fighting Sabo, which that's a whole other, like I want to know what Sabo is on. That's what I want.
Yeah, facts.
Like, what's my boy getting into?
Do you guys see maybe you think Luffy gets separated from the crew again for any reason? Just a random question, random thought.
You mean like Luffy himself, or the embodiment of Joy Boy inside him?
No, Luffy himself.
So
like maybe towards the conclusion of this fight.
If Luffy himself were to be taken, which, like we said, I'm pretty sure I'm leaning towards the Blackbeard pirate showing up in Wano here. I mean, not Wano, Whole Cake. So, which, I mean, I guess it could turn out that it's the red hair pirates. That'd be a crazy plot twist, but
he steals more. He steals resources. I mean,
movie coming soon.
Like, I mean, if the red hair pirates making their move and like Blackbeard like moving on Wano or something like that would be a crazy turn of events, especially because of the fact that the 2 feet seem to have like cloaks and they don't seem to be on super big people, and Blackbeard is a really huge dude versus it doesn't look like it's a huge dude or huge people at Whole Cake.
Yeah, no. I guess it's just, like I said, a point of curiosity. And I wasn't talking about the team being separated. That's why I specified Luffy being separated. Luffy being isolated from the team alongside the fact that we know our boy is captured. So it's just kind of like, what if Sabo and Luffy end up in some type of captured state? This is something that ends up leading to the actual Grand Fleet being pulled together in a united front to take on things, and there's a clash between the Luffy Grand Fleet, the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, and the Revolution Army and Red, and like there's ends up being this other really big clash that ends up happening as a result, as a campaign, and it's kind of like the semblance of like the whole Ace Luffy Sabo thing, and now it's like, well, we gotta get rid of Sabo and Luffy the same way that Ace was gotten rid of, kind of thing. Was just this random thought that just popped into my head while I'm on the stream with y'all right now, which is why I asked what y'all thought. Like, is it
basically like a Marineford where both brothers have to be saved,
right?
And then you finally get a code like the warlords, or like the people left over from the warlords, like the Boa Hancock faction.
Yeah, because Luffy's the tying piece to everything. Ultimately.
And you got the Revs having Sabo, like a general, like their right hand on the line, and Luffy on the line. And I could see like Dragon being like, nah.
The whole family, bro. Sabo, they force Garp to step down because they're tired of dealing with Garp stuff. Just, bro, how crazy would that be for? It's just, I could just see it, Oda having a scene, and it's like head down captured. It's Luffy, Dragon, and Garp.
Yeah, like you get the 3 generations of the Monkey D family. You get Zoro and them. You get the Straw Hats, the 7 from the Dressrosa generals, and you kind of get to see like these people that Luffy's helped throughout. Like you see all the fishmen, you see the people of
everyone pleading for him. And again, this tied back to Joy Boy, to Roger, of like the public execution of public enemy number 1 and 2 and 3 basically all just happening at the same time. Maybe even seeing Zoro having to step up in a form of almost being the vice captain that he is and having to lead the fleet and the crew, and even seeing him maybe go through some type of emotional and character development because of it. Again, it's just something wild. It's not even like, I don't usually go into headcanon space, but it was just a wild thought that popped into my head just now.
No, because this is very much shaping up to look like the Thriller Bark portion of the story, which means we're about to get into that Amazon Lily Marineford territory. And the Amazon Lily portion of the story, the Amazon Lily portion would be, you know, like Law, Kid, the Straw Hats, the Minks, all these people coming together to form this conference effectively and prioritize saving Luffy. And make that a goal for them to get out eventually and get them. And then so what you have is what I've been looking forward to, is like the worst generation versus the world government. So then it's a matter of freeing Luffy, letting him shine, and then like Luffy likely pulling out his awakening right there and having been sealed, helping his power grow even more, stuff like that.
Because if it's really the acknowledgement of Joy Boy, why would the government want to get rid of it now? They want to get their hands on it, so there may be experiments, again, bringing back Vegapunk and stuff, experiments that need to be done on Luffy now that he has, air quotes, awakened Joy Boy. So I can see this really taking a very dynamic tone change if Luffy was to then be like, all right, well, this is what's going on, and the government, the powers, and everyone is just like, oh wait, don't kill him anymore, capture him. And then everyone's trying to stop it from happening. He still gets captured, and again, it leads to the joining of all these different forces and entities, whether under the same umbrella or just having to show up for the sake of Luffy.
So I kind of see it like being the hole in their plan kind of being sword, and the fact that the Navy and the world government don't actually communicate on all their strategies, because you get what you have here is like this hole caused by like DS Drake, where you could easily have him kind of step back and go communicate with the Navy, and them not realizing what the world government was on and trying to take out him, have him kind of end up getting access to that information, finding out where they want to keep Luffy, what they want to do with Luffy, what they want to do with Sabo, etc. And that kind of being a hole in the military that is brought on as a result of this arc and them betraying it. And of course, you have somebody like Shanks, who I believe is going to end up kind of embodying some of what makes all the Yonko who they are, because he's flexing his information network, which is what Big Mom was known for, and coming to and giving information to the Gorosei. If he really did go and snitch on Luffy, then effectively what he's done is help stack an active war and get people to pay attention to Luffy and pay attention. So he's basically manipulating and creating the biggest war in the world, better than Kaido was.
Exactly. And again, even to the point that Light just made, and this is to what you just said as well, leading to the conflict of, again, Zoro having to step up and basically finding all this out and challenging Shanks, and then even thinking even further, that being the precursor of, okay, wait, Zoro, you beat Shanks, and then now we finally get to see the final conclusion of Zoro fighting our great Count Swordsman himself, Mihawk. That would be another kind of segue to kind of tie up that later on as well. So again, this just, I'm sorry we created a whole One Piece universe of stories that's never gonna happen. But I appreciate y'all indulging my thought process.
Well, so Zoro versus Shanks doesn't seem like something that I think we'll actually truly get. But I do think that what you brought up about them having to have this conflict centered around Luffy isn't out of the realm of possibility. And I do think that this, like a lot of the tests, so to speak, have been on Luffy. Mm-hmm. And I do think that the Straw Hats themselves as a unit having their autonomy truly challenged and their ability to self-govern, because that's always been one of the like strengths of the crew is how they're a band of egoists, coming together. So this idea of maybe putting them all to the test and their fields, like we got Sanji actually having to make that cake, where we could have it be that like something happens with Luffy and it's now a race to Lodestar or something like that, where they're gonna have like the final fight, and maybe Lodestar is the final island now because God Valley was an island after Lodestar that got destroyed or something like that. But we get one of these islands close towards the end of the New World, and then that explains and allows us to have that conflict there instead of us going backwards, because I think we're going to be moving towards Raftel no matter where, or like when in the story the conflict happens. I think geographically we will only be closer and closer to Raftel.
Yeah, so I guess to elaborate on that more, I don't think Shanks and Zoro have a fight that's like resolved, but I think there's a clash that catches the eye of Mihawk to say like, you are now worthy of fighting me. So that's what I'm saying. I could see something around Luffy leading to an interaction that leads to a clash of swords that then is like Mihawk is like, oh, I'm ready to challenge you now. I'm putting everything on the stake of the world and everything that's going on right now to prove whether I'm the number one swordsman for real or not, kind of thing. Because Mihawk has a lot of pride about him around certain things. It's there's a lot of it's not even cockiness, it's just like known hubris, but there's a lot of guilt around like I was just given the title of number one swordsman without ever being able to challenge anything for that. So that's kind of where I was going with that. I still think, like, again, like we're saying, we know Shanks is super relevant to Luffy. So Zoro taking out Shanks wouldn't make any sense in any kind of way or form. But like I said, I think a clash happens. I would love to see a clash happen, much like between them, that leads to ultimately what justifies Mihawk taking a very serious fight. And maybe it's to convince Mihawk to take part in the battle to rescue Luffy as a result. Like maybe it's a trial that he has to, like Mihawk's the one that sends him. He's like, you think you're ready to save him, but you can't even get past me. If you're really ready, show me, go test Shanks. Shanks has the answers that you're looking for. And Mihawk is the one that actually even pushes Zoro and the crew to go check Shanks, meet up with Shanks. They have the clash. It's not resolved. It's just kind of like a test, a limit test of like, can you even handle this interaction? And Mihawk is like, I accept the results of this and I will challenge you upon whatever series. Again, there's a lot of things that just can be pulled together in this kind of like whirlpool around if Luffy were to be taken. And that's just the premise that I was kind of playing around with. If Luffy was to be taken for some reason, it could really set up what, again, because we know we're in the conclusion of this series, it could really set up something and then lead to the final arc, which is now Luffy is back with the team. Everyone is super, super powered up again. Luffy has, maybe not mastered, but gotten a better sense of what his new powers. And we maybe see that Gear 6 even, or whatever, Super Awakened, Gear 5th, Luffy special, Gear 5th Straw Hat mode, whatever.
Ultra
some
Instinct.
type of other, Ultra Instinct, Gear 5th Bankai, whatever you.
I mean, it kind of feels like it's like that when you have like when
the white hair, it's Toy Studio.
I mean, like Goku had to fit the Jiren, Luffy's in the Kaido. Yeah, why not give him the Ultra Instinct?
Yeah, so I mean, it's very interesting, and the other thing is that, so when you talk about characters, so we talked about Even just now we're talking about My Hero Academia. We talked about this. Aniki made this point last week of like, don't forget that Luffy's a pirate. He's the protagonist, but is he a good guy? You know what I'm saying? But then also this aspect of like white and light and purity and the representation of humanity and all of these different things. There's a lot of things to be said for that. You know, again, tie back to the whole Nika thing and what that actually ties into mythologically. So there's just a lot of things that can be sorted through here. You know, light in its purest form is white. You know, all these different ideas and concepts again.
Elf says elf baths needs to happen. Like, when the elf bath be next? And he asks, Light says thoughts on Luffy not living long theory.
I mean, I'll let you go, Aniki.
My stance on the whole like Luffy potentially dying young thing is that it would make sense for the powers and all that other stuff that Luffy's been given, but it would not make sense for One Piece. I think One Piece is ultimately a story that wants to cherish and value freedom, and Luffy not getting to enjoy his time as a pirate king, not getting to be free and on these seas and happy just doesn't seem to be what One Piece is going for as a story. Like, that ending doesn't fit with what One Piece has tried to give us, especially since Luffy is supposed to be a successful pirate king, like the true pirate king in this sense.
Kendall?
I think, much like Aniki, I think it doesn't serve the purpose of the actual premise of what One Piece is presented. Last episode, I think Aniki and I really went into the point of like last couple episodes of freedom being the theme of One Piece. And I think I stand with you on that, and I will die on that hill that freedom is the theme of One Piece. And I think that taking that from Luffy, there would have to be a very strategic way that you go about doing that without compromising the way that Oda has been telling the story. And I don't, it's not about it being a challenge. It just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? I could see it. I could see it being the release of the powers. Maybe he just gives up the power. Maybe it's not that he dies young. Maybe the power is no longer with him. Maybe there is something in that realm that happens. But Luffy should live freely for a long period of time, is what I would ultimately like to see as an end result.
Okay. Unfortunately, Vash is not able to join us on call.
No callers today, guys. No callers.
No callers. Rest the pepperinos, my dudes.
It's all right. Next time. But yeah, next in the segment, favorite chapter of the week for the series.
I mean, for me, it's MHA, but that's not surprising anybody, so.
It is not.
It's objectively MHA, but subjectively, it's One Piece. Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. I think chapter overall, definitely MHA, but there's a lot of things that I really like from One Piece, especially that final page. The whole entire final page of that chapter is really, it gives me goosebumps, honestly. And then the monologue from Undead Unluck, I really, really appreciated that monologue, and then seeing Zip show up. And then right after those three, I would say probably Ayashimon, just because we got a lot of development kind of laid out. And then obviously, we don't really care what Black Clover is doing. I'm just kidding. We care what Black Clover is doing, but it's I hate these chapters because it feels like the last two chapters could have been a chapter. And that frustrates me. That frustrates me a lot. I love that they're taking time to draw out things and give us the animation and give us the story. You do need more panels so that you're not clustering the story. And I think that they're doing a good job of like transitioning between things, but it really feels like the last two chapters could have been one chapter.
Yeah, like I'm not even.
It's okay. Don't rag on Black Clover. Don't just let him be great.
It's more like what's gonna happen after the end of Black Clover kind of thing.
Yeah.
But let me try to see if I could buy a little bit more time for Vash to jump in like.
I mean, give us
five.
what's yours? What's your
So
chapter,
my ranking was,
Sam?
of course, like My Hero story. This chapter
Vash has officially abandoned us. I just want you to know that he just said in the chat that he has officially abandoned us for today. That is what I translated from his text. Is that he's abandoning us. We love you, Vash.
Sorry, Colin. Maybe next time. But yeah, my list. My Hero Academia, definitely like all this build up and all this comes into. It was definitely worth a wait for Horikoshi to go on break for, especially where we're still call out interested even after 2 weeks, like from the chapter that we knew was going to happen. It was to establish what Dabi's backstory is, and it gives Dabi this more intricate villain backstory, even more developed discovery of who he really is. And usually, like when it comes to story, when you fully establish their backstory, their true reason for villainy, and like onto their final battle, they might not live, and that's kind of the reason why that I don't see Dabi pulling out from the end. But yeah, definitely for sure, My Hero takes that top part for number one. I actually would give Undead Unluck that's number 2 spot because of that monologue speech from Ruin. The whole like you guys, everybody keeps questioning what I do, and yet you humans are the ones that did all this stuff to yourself, even the morally, and create everything that where it's unfair, unruly, unequal. You all do it all by yourself, all to yourself, and yet look at me. I'm unrestricted. I have no restrictions. I have nothing to bound me, nothing to really establish anybody to care about. All I have is my God, and that's all I really need. And I'm just gonna be doing, and I'm just gonna do all these massacre of killings and use all the weapons that God provided me. I read a lot of it. Number 3, I think I would give it to Ayashimon as well, because we get more of its world building backstory. It is technically a training arc for Maruo, the main character's story background.
Yeah.
Him having to go through the whole Rocky training story technically. Him like having to like do the Rocky running while the motorcycle gang was just on the motorcycles.
Right.
Him having to punch through fire. I get the whole Creed moment, the Creed 2 moment where he was training the fire. And every time he fails the what is it called? I think it was the chestnuts. Every time he fails, it always hits back at him.
Yeah.
Having the old dude, that's his Mickey.
That's
his Mickey.
reference. That's another reference to another series, and I can't think of what it is now that I'm thinking about it. The chestnut thing is an homage to another series, and I can't think of what it is.
It's Hajime no Ippo in the.
That's what it is. It's Ippo. It's Ippo.
And then like where you have the development, like maybe we should put him in a real life situation, sink or swim, and he does it by himself, where he sees a situation where the building's on fire, a kid's up there, his motivation to be an MC hero is just kicking into overdrive. He goes into the fire building, flamethrowers, flame walls, and then you don't really get to see it, but at least like the next panel, like you see the little girl telling like he fought the fire. He beat up the fire.
I read that in like a little kid's voice, and I was like, oh my god, it's sort of like this is the most precious thing ever. Like he just came in and beat up the fire, and I was like, he just beat up the fire. I don't know what y'all.
He's the firefighter, right? He's the firefighter. Okay, we got it. You got the fire punches. You got the firefight. Got you.
Yeah.
Definitely, like we already could see the next arc might go to the Hostess Club, because that was technically their next mission was to recruit more of the former gang. But from last chapter, someone already invaded the Hostess Club that works for the dude, the main villain, Dopo.
Yeah.
And now like those are technically on the next rival to go into the fight.
And like we was talking about earlier, the fact that they're like we're not Dopo's lackeys.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So that's like a whole nother like dynamic power setup that's kind of being pushed there. So
And like they play for keeps. They're not taking no hostages and that sort of stuff. And I still like the concept where when a yokai dies, all their money drops. Like
you just
it reminds the Scott Pilgrim
versus the world.
exactly.
Yeah,
that's
man.
I'm liking Ayashimon.
If y'all could humor me for just a couple more minutes, I got two things. One, are you all reading One Punch Man?
Yes.
I read One Punch Man. A moment of appreciation.
Oh yes, you're right.
A moment of appreciation for One Punch Man, for the art of One Punch Man, for just I know the anime.
That cover overwhelmed me. Like, what the hell?
Oh
like, whoa!
My gosh! I know season 2 kind of left a bad taste for everyone, but if you just really appreciate anything about art in general, like if you're an artist or a mangaka or aspiring comic, I mean, please read One Punch Man. The past couple chapters of even like playing around with light, like the power or light as itself, and he does it so masterfully. It's like, how long have you been, like, who are you? Where did you come from? We do not deserve you, sir. Like, this is crazy.
And I'm gonna be honest, like you should try to avoid letting a bad anime visual representation or a lower quality anime visual representation, because I guess season 2 of One Punch Man probably wouldn't have been so scorned if it hadn't been preceded by such an ambitious project that season 1 really was. We got to address, that elephant in the room. But One Punch Man, if nothing else, if you just enjoy, the classic action stuff, while simultaneously getting to somewhat experience a bit of a deconstruction via it being like all in-game characters kind of having their own journeys now, then One Punch Man is definitely a manga for you.
I think also, so like animation adaptation wise, again, this is an arc, but this has been like 70% of the One Punch Man story thus far at this point. I'm exaggerating a little bit because I don't know the actual numbers, but it's 50% plus of the story of the entire story has been this monster association arc thing that's been going on and continuously developing. And like I've always said, I think the issue with season 2 was that they should have just given us 24 episodes. I think that 24 episodes and a little deeper of a stop point in the manga would have made a little bit more sense for those that read the manga. If we had just stopped like right when they got to the going underground, like actually invading, that would have been a much better stop point than where they chose to stop in the anime as far as it was debuted. But like Aniki said, if you were just going off of anime, and this is why I feel sorry for y'all anime only sometimes, The Promised Neverland is a beautiful manga. I'm not just talking about the story. It's a beautiful manga that you do not get to appreciate based off of season 2 or the final season of the anime.
It's true. No, like, but at least with One Punch Man season 2, it's still continuing on following within its story.
Yeah.
It's also for you to
but you get
enjoy the villain side of it. Like, I guess.
But you get, so like One Punch Man, you get a story. You get like these little mini arcs that reach a point of completion throughout the entire of season 1, and then it's just this one story that you get the prelude to, basically. You don't get anything. It's like you just really just got a random prelude with nothing else, no other payoff from it.
But yeah, I think Goro has been very well established throughout the entire long arc, and even though like season 2 only, I'm gonna say 30%. I think they only cover 30% of what the manga has been doing.
Okay, so like officially you could say that chapter 77 is where this arc really truly starts, and we're at chapter 159.
Oof, yeah. So that's
Mhm.
definitely upwards
That's at
upwards of
least that's around
50%.
yeah, that's like that 60 to 70%. Yeah, it's a lot of it. So
Again, a hard capture comparatively to other things and situations. It was just a hard sell and a hard capture. This was probably one of those series that would have benefited from another extra year or two before we got
mhm.
the season two. Maybe another year before we got the season two, and then putting a better idea of where the direction of the manga was going and capturing that into, again, I still think it should have had 24 episodes for a season two, and then giving it a proper stopping point would have given, because I think a lot of anime onlys, one, were frustrated because people hyped up Garo, that the manga readers were hyping up Garo, and you didn't really see that flushed out as well. And then you just, again, I feel like you get a very awkward stopping point in the anime for what season two actually is. And then again, you get less, so there was beautiful art, fights, those stuff. And then you get season two and you get a lot less of all of that with a lot less episodes.
But we know like this arc is about to end very soon, right? Especially when you have the, I guess maybe the final fight confrontation of this arc.
Yes, I think Blast's appearance and even Blast's exiting in these past couple chapters tell the tale of the turning to a different story.
Yeah, because Blast strongly suggests that we're about to get out of the realm of what people have currently or what identify as what One Punch Man is about typically.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like it. Still also kept the comedy within Saitama too. Like
Yeah.
he's just literally like, I just heard some disturbance in my house. It's disturbance outside, and I wanted to complain, but my house got destroyed, and I'm just picking whatever left over, and I'm just pissed. It's two superpowered people that wanted to fight, but chooses not to kind of fight with each other. Well, I think Garo just wanted to fight everything and everybody. Well, in fact, Saitama just he just didn't really seem to care anymore in this sort of stuff. But we can finally say like a good fight can really happen now with Saitama and Garo.
Yeah.
No, it can't. Still not even in his league is the funny part.
Oh no, I managed to read some of the webcomic for One Punch Man past this point, and there's a certain move that I'm waiting to see Saitama use because I would be so sad if they took it out.
Mhm.
But let's just say that like man flips the table like
Wait,
this.
after he flipped the boat and flipped the ocean.
The man became a professional surfer with a battleship. I'm crying. But the story stays true to itself. Is again another mangaka, a duo, the duo of the mangaka and the artist of what they're putting out is really good. It's not for everybody. Like I always say with everything, One Piece isn't for everybody. One Punch Man is not for everybody.
I feel like One
But
Punch Man is it's much easier to ease into and just enjoy to read and stuff.
it
like
is,
that.
it is. And the fact, like I said, the fact that you get these, like, you get a squash of these multiple little mini arcs, and then you get this long arc that you get that's built into. And again, you're seeing that again, Saitama hasn't changed. There's a lot of time in this arc as well, where Saitama isn't even a part of the story. Like if you guys think back to like a lot of the underground portion of this, Saitama isn't even in the story for chapters at a time. Like really just not even. He's like, oh yeah,
The
by
One
the
Punch
way,
Man is not the most important aspect of One Punch Man over
he's
half the
not.
Nope.
time.
He's really not. And again, I think that's the problem with the stop point and where season two's animation stopped, because there were just better stop points that they could have taken. But it's good. Anyways, I thought it was a good week to touch on One Punch Man.
Even though it comes out even though new chapters comes out in random times, but
Yeah.
when it does comes back, it does hit. It's hard.
Yeah.
But you gotta love One Punch Man.
Yeah, but my last thing, if all of you can humor me, if you come and watch this later on and you see this, I just want y'all to at Anime Lately and give me a Shonen Jump suggestion or Viz, whichever app you're reading from or site you're reading from, give us a suggestion for something that we're not covering right now to just check out, or maybe even be something that we cover on the show. Tell us something that you're liking that you would like us to check out with you.
I mean, Spy Family just came out yesterday. The anime.
Oh man, yeah.
I haven't read Spy Family since like chapter 38 ish.
I think it's up to like 60.
Yeah, I'm about to say, let me tell you, I am equally as far back, probably, maybe a little bit further than you, but I also took a step back because the story was getting so good, I needed it to build up. I'm going to be quite honest. That's why I stopped reading it. I was on 49. So yeah, I stopped for a minute because I was like, I need you. I'm tired of reading this week to week. This is torturous. I think I'm still on the ship, actually. I think I'm still on the ship.
It also takes a lot of breaks. There's also a lot of breaks in between too. So it's kind of really hard to pick up, and it's also like a bi-weekly series or bi-monthly or monthly series sometimes.
Yeah, it's a weekly, bi-weekly to bi-monthly depending on when they choose to take breaks. So,
but there's gonna be a new chapter next week, and they're going into the backstory of Lloyd. So, I mean, if people want us to talk about Spy Family, they can just tell us in the comments down below.
Yeah.
But until then, guys, give us your plugs. Aniki.
Yo, Aniki Smash FSP. You can find me as Aniki Smash FSP on pretty much anything. Just type it in Google. I checked. It'll give you anything you need right there. Gonna try to get some stuff out these next couple of weeks. I think I have some really good videos, especially on the topic of Dabi, that's just been sitting in the back burner. So hope y'all enjoy that.
Kendall.
Yes, you can find me at Kendall X Anime. That's KENDALLX Anime on Twitter, TikTok, Quirk Chat, and Instagram. And if you go to my Instagram, you can see other pages that I am connected to and affiliated with in the Conquer movement.
Down below.
And that information is, like Sam said, down below.
Down below. Yeah, guys. If you guys enjoyed our talk with Shonen Ronin, please like the video. Oh, subscribe to the video. Oh, subscribe, of course. Thank you guys for helping us reach 2,800. Yes, almost to 3K.
Getting closer.
But like I guys says, all information of all of our links and all social medias and all of our stories and YouTube videos, all down below in the descriptions. Thank you guys for watching and listening to the Anime channel for the Shonen Ronin this week. Peace.